From you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Has to be said.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Friday, the 12th of September. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Dawn Neeson. It's been a week of chaos for Sir Keir Starmer, and that's put it mildly. He lost his Deputy Prime Minister and his ambassador to the United States, and now there are fears that Peter Mandelson will get his revenge on the Prime Minister.
And there's more bad news for the government today. The economy didn't grow a single jot in July. This makes tax rises in November in that budget even more likely.
And we'll have all the latest on that manhunt following the murder of Charlie Kirk, as video footage shows the killer calmly fleeing the scene, with Utah's governor vowing to pursue the death penalty.
Elsewhere on the show, find out why the government's plans to close asylum hotels could lead to thousands of illegal migrants being dumped in student accommodation, and locals won't be able to do a thing about it.
And we'll catch up with Prince Harry as he makes a surprise trip to Ukraine. OK, you nailed it. You nailed it, Tom Harwood. Nightmare on Downing Street.
Well, I think it might be.
Well, it does involve the Prince of Darkness.
Oh, I love all of these terms. It's so theatrical.
It's like a Hammer horror film come to life, isn't it? Only it's politics.
But it is true. I mean, Peter Mandelson, Lord Mandelson, is a man scorned. He is not going to go down quietly. He was asked to resign. He refused to resign, so he was fired. And now he's going to be coming back to Parliament, back to the House of Lords, where he'll have a platform to speak about the Labour government. He's not going to be saying nice things about Keir Starmer.
He's not. And bear in mind, he's got previous for this. He has done it like 3 times before. He does keep coming back from the dead just when you think you're going to... And he is one of those people, you know that saying, people, about keep your enemies closer than your friends.
Yeah.
He really is someone you don't want an enemy of.
You don't want to make an enemy of Peter Mandelson.
All your newspapers today are saying, Lord Mandelson going, well, they knew everything about me, and every single newspaper is asking the same question about our Prime Minister's judgment, and I think that is the bottom line here.
This is the thing. It could be a bombshell revelation if Peter Mandelson says, look, I told the Prime Minister exactly what he now says he didn't know. I mean, what if that came about? You can imagine so many different ways in which this could become very, very difficult for the Prime Minister and for Downing Street.
And you know, Mandelson, he won't do it in that out-and-out way. He'll do it subtly. But, I mean, there is an air of dead man walking in Downing Street.
Yeah, and of course this on the day that we now know zero growth in July.
Oh, yeah, cheer up, everybody.
What was the watchword that this government was elected on? They said the watchword?
Growth. Growth.
We've got none of it.
For the working people. How many of you are still working, by the way? That's another area, isn't it? And, of course, we are talking about the situation in America with that manhunt continuing, which is quite frightening, considering we know a lot about him, we know what it looks like, we know what he was wearing. We've seen him jump off the roof, which was quite a big jump as well.
Well, we're getting more information all the time. We're expecting perhaps more updates from the FBI during the course of this programme. But in the meantime, let's get all of your latest news headlines with Sophia Hill.
Tom, thank you. A very good afternoon. It's just gone midday. These are your latest headlines. Now, we start with some breaking news in the last hour. We've learned that the 33-year-old Havon Riley has been jailed for life at the Old Bailey with a minimum term of 34 years over the shooting of a 9-year-old girl and 3 men outside a restaurant in a long-running gang feud. Riley was a hired spotter and getaway driver during the shooting. The girl was hit in the head by one of 6 bullets fired by a man on a passing motorbike as she sat with her family in a restaurant in Hackney in May last year. The 33-year-old from Tottenham was found guilty of the causing grievous harm with intent to the girl and attempting to murder the 3 men injured at tables nearby. Now, in politics, back here in the UK, a cabinet minister has said that Sir Keir Starmer would not have appointed Lord Peter Mandelson if he had known the depth of his relationship with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. But he did so because he felt that he made a good fit to work with President Trump. While Sir Keir Starmer is under pressure for his poor judgment after Lord Mandelson admitted to long-running ties with the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein during his vetting. The Prime Minister dismissed Lord Mandelson as ambassador to Washington after damning emails emerged showing that he supported Epstein even as he faced jail for sexual offences. This was all, of course, less than 24 hours after the Prime Minister backed Lord Mandelson publicly in the Commons.
The relationship between the US and the UK is one of our foremost relationships, and I have confidence in the ambassador in the role that he is doing.
Second ministerial crisis in a week for Labour, following on from Angela Rayner's resignation over her tax affairs. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage this morning shared his concerns.
An enormously talented bloke, of that was no doubt. You know, I dealt with him when he was a European Commissioner 20 years ago. But to have appointed him to that role was a serious misjudgment from the Prime Minister. We don't yet know what the intelligence briefings would have said, but it looks as though Morgan McSweeney, the Prime Minister's right-hand man, and the Prime Minister ignored the warnings, carried on. He was then reluctant to get rid of Mandelson, and he's now left himself in a very vulnerable position.
Turning to the US, CCTV video footage of Charlie Kirk's shooting suspect fleeing the scene has been released by the FBI as their manhunt continues. The investigators are offering a $100,000 reward for any information that could lead to the identification of the gunman. The video shows someone running across the roof of a building before jumping off and walking into the street. The killer is believed to have fired the shots from the roof of a building near the courtyard, approximately 130 metres away from where Charlie Kirk was speaking. Overnight, Charlie Kirk's body was transported to Arizona on board Air Force Two, with Vice US President J.D. Vance and his wife travelling with the now widowed Erica Kirk. Yvette Cooper has announced a raft of sanctions on Russia as the Foreign Secretary visited Kyiv for the first overseas visit in her new role. Arriving in the Ukrainian capital today, Ms. Cooper was welcomed by the Foreign Minister. The visit follows a week of heightened tensions after Russian drones violated Polish airspace during attacks on Ukraine, prompting Poland and NATO forces to respond. She reinforced the UK's support for Ukraine, saying, "We will not stand idly by as Putin continues his barbaric invasion of Ukraine. His complete disregard for sovereignty has been shown this week." Now, Prince Harry has made a surprise trip to Kyiv with his Invictus Games Foundation after an invitation from the Ukrainian government. He said that he wants to do everything possible to support the recovery of injured military staff. The Duke is due to meet veterans and the Ukrainian Prime Minister today. His visit follows several days in the UK, where he was reunited with his father, the King, and it also comes as his Archwell Foundation has pledged $500,000 to projects helping injured children in Ukraine and Gaza. And seeing your doctor quickly matters more than anything else in the NHS. That's the verdict from the public in a new poll. It finds that GP access is the biggest priority, with A&E and staff retention close behind. Sir Keir Starmer's plan for change pledged that by July 2029, 92% of people will be seen without 18 weeks for routine hospital treatments. But reducing these waiting times only ranks 5th for the public in terms of their priorities. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. Before I hand you back to Tom and Dawn, let's quickly check in on the markets.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.355 and €1.155. The price of gold is £2,691.87 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 9,325 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 8 minutes past midday. Now, the Prime Minister is facing serious questions over his judgment after it emerged he had ignored a series of warnings about Peter Mandelson's connections to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, all before appointing him as the UK's ambassador to America.
Not just warnings, he could have watched several documentaries, read several newspapers, read several books, but hey, who are we to quibble? And it's now reported that the so-called Prince of Darkness is so furious at being sacked that he has decided to try and bring Keir Starmer down with him.
As if that wasn't bad enough for the Prime Minister, Labour MPs are said to be despondent over the chaos in government, with all of this coming just days after Angela Rayner was forced to resign herself over her tax affairs.
Yeah, Labour peer Lord Glassman told GBNews political editor Christopher Hope on his Choppers Political podcast, you may have heard of it, that he warned Number 10 about Mandelson earlier this year.
It occurred when I was in DC for the inauguration. I obviously had to meet a lot of MAGA people, and they would just show me photographs of Peter Mandelson blowing out the birthday candles with Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, I sent the alarm messages saying, think about this. But he has, you know, he was considered the right man to do the trade deal.
As you did.
And I think he has done it.
Did you warn the PM personally?
No, I didn't do that.
But people around him?
Yeah.
Well, let's get some immediate reaction to this story. Delighted to be joined by the chief political commentator at the iPaper, Kitty Donaldson. Kitty, lots of reporting now that Number 10 are very worried about what an unleashed Peter Mandelson might be like.
I know, absolutely. And he's not known as the Prince of Darkness for nothing, is he? This is a guy who was, you know, briefing against other people in government before some of us were even born. So wait and see what happens. I think there is a worry. Yes, in Number 10, two worries, actually. One is that more could come out about Mandelson's links to Epstein, although they feel that they have lanced that boil by letting him go. But secondly, what damage he could do now to the Prime Minister himself, and whether he adds to the sense of chaos that is now surrounding Number 10. The second thing that's going on today and yesterday in Parliament is this kind of absolutely astonished feeling from Labour MPs that it should have got to this in the first place, that what was obvious to them by Wednesday lunchtime when the Prime Minister was standing up defending Peter Mandelson, Prime Minister's questions, was not obvious to Number 10. And the person taking the flak for that is Morgan McSweeney, the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff.
Kitty, you could argue that there is pretty much nothing Mandelson could do that Starmer isn't doing to himself already. I mean, talk about displaying the most astonishing lack of judgment ever, especially for a lawyer who has forensic skills at examining every situation, allegedly, and one for someone that's meant to be running a country. Yes, but those are different skills to being a politician, I think, and I think that's what some in the Labour Party see as the issue. And it's also a matter of loyalty. So one MP said to me this week that they couldn't, when Louise Haigh was sacked as Transport Secretary, she was sacked over a spent conviction on fraud for a mobile phone she claimed from a company before she entered Parliament. And the MP said to me, I can't believe the Prime Minister would sack Lou over a Nokia, but not sack Peter Mandelson over his over his friendship with a nonce. And you're like, I was sort of like, oh my goodness, right, yeah, okay. So it's this matter of judgment that people are worried about from Keir Starmer, and very much like a kind of, I always think of it as like Stalin's lieutenants. You know, they always went to Stalin himself and said, please beg for my family, and it's the people around you are the problem. So in the same way that Morgan McSweeney is being blamed, and people are saying that Keir Starmer's got to be thrown under a bus, and actually there'll be no tears in the PLP, the Parliamentary Labour Party, if Morgan is thrown under a bus.
But at some point it's got to come back to the principal, the person that makes those appointments, that ultimately has the final call. He might take advice from lots of people. I mean, it sounds a bit like a sort of medieval court where no one's allowed to criticise the king, so they all have to say the king's very poorly advised, when they actually mean the king's making shocking decisions himself. I mean, it feels like that Labour MPs are almost doing this using Morgan McSweeney as a lightning rod for their dissatisfaction and frustration with the man that, as Labour MPs, they can't really criticise publicly, the Prime Minister himself.
Yes, but as Morgan seems, is also emblematic of a kind of wing of the party, of the sort of Blairite wing, the kind of the right of the Labour Party. And there's a lot of MPs, particularly on the, you know, on the welfare rebellion, on this battle that's coming up about child benefit, the child cap on benefit. a lot of Labour MPs think that they should tack to the left, whereas McSweeney, who is a strong ally of Shabana Mahmood, the new Home Secretary, they very much represent the right of the party, and that is kind of tackling small boats, things that your viewers are very interested in. So in some ways, they're taking the fight to reform, but are they leaving behind Labour principles? And that's something that Labour MPs are worried about.
Kitty, can this government come back from this?
Well, that's the $64,000 question, isn't it? I think at the moment they're at a moment of crisis, right? Absolutely. There's no denying that. In fact, I was kind of astonished by some of the hysterical briefings I was getting yesterday from Labour MPs, some of them saying the Prime Minister's curtains. That was a direct quote. It's very hard, actually, for the Labour Party to get rid of their Prime Minister, much harder than it is for the Tories to get rid of their leader. That's the first thing. Second thing is recess next week. MPs are back in their constituencies for the conference recess, which lasts a few weeks. So I think things will calm down a little bit, although we do have the state visit from Donald Trump. So that will, flare everything up again. And how Trump reacts to Mandelson's defenestration, that'd be interesting, because we're seeing reports that the president was not pleased not to be told personally by the Prime Minister that Mandelson was on his way out. So that will be interesting. But I was just talking to an MP just now, actually, who was saying the big crisis point is Labour conference, and that's coming up in a couple of weeks. And people are expecting, this is the other interesting thing that's going on, is the Deputy Labour leadership campaign. And there's this sort of axis between Lucy Powell, who is now on the outside of government because she was sacked in the reshuffle, and she's a strong ally of Andy Burnham, the Mayor for Greater Manchester. And people are expecting Andy Burnham to come to conference and make an absolute pain of himself, basically, to sort of show the direction that the party could take for life after Keir Starmer. So I think that is the next sort of crunch point. I think they'll probably limp through next week. The Prime Minister had better, come up with a pretty barnstorming speech to conference. Otherwise, the grumbling is going to keep carrying on.
No more talk about freeing the sausages. It's got to be a bit more strong than that. Kitty Donaldson, thanks indeed for joining us. What an extraordinary moment of time it is for this government.
Yeah, and talking of sausages, if you heard any fruity language in that interview, we do apologise. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, let's
sausages and fruit. I mean, I guess there's a link. Well, it's both food items. In any case, we apologise if there was any.
I think it was some fruity language from the Labour MPs being quoted. But let's go to the United States now, because the manhunt continues for the killer of the prominent activist Charlie Kirk, as US investigators release new CCTV footage and appeal for help in identifying a person of interest.
Yeah, the FBI is offering a $100,000 reward for information leading to the gunman's identification.
Well, footage shows the suspect fleeing, running across a rooftop, jumping down and disappearing into the street.
The shot is believed to have been fired from a rooftop around 130 metres away from where Kirk was speaking, as you can see on the map there on your screens. OK, we're joined now by GB News national reporter Charlie Peters. Charlie, we were covering this live yesterday. What are the developments recently?
Well, you've read out the latest information there, but what we do know in the information released yesterday from the FBI is that the forearm imprints and the footwear imprint and the palm that was recovered by their investigators were from the rooftop where this suspect jumped down, and that footage you were just playing. So that evidence, originally believed by some to be related to the firing position, is actually from that exit spot where he jumped down before abandoning the bolt-action rifle, an imported Mauser, so quite an old rifle, in a nearby wooded area. With a $100,000 reward for any information that leads to a suspect being detained. I think this is a sign of the FBI being under extreme pressure now. Pressure that you can see its director, Kash Patel, and the deputy, Dan Bongino. It almost feels as though they recognise that questions are being asked. In fact, it's not just scrutiny, it's a bit of scorn now, whether those two men are up to the task. These are, of course, political appointments. There are questions about their lack of experience in federal law enforcement, or indeed any law enforcement, before their appointments, and a lot of focus on the sort of work that they might be able to direct in their leadership roles. We've also heard from the public safety officials in Utah that they say they have no idea if this suspect could still be in the States. And Tom, you were raising these concerns well over 24 hours ago, saying that, of course, there's borderless travel within the United States, but also concerns that this person could have fled further afield as well. There's an airport just 45 minutes away. We've seen from that escape route that they were off the immediate vicinity of the shooting site very quickly indeed. And we've also seen some Ring doorbell footage, which has been circulating online, appearing to show the suspect running away from the scene through some neighbourhoods as well. Where they have gone to from there appears to be anyone's guess, and that is a major crisis for the FBI.
Just one thing I'm curious about, Charlie. What is the truth about this things being inscribed on the actual bullets? Is there any truth in that rumour online about sort of trans messages, or...?
Well, the Wall Street Journal stood this up through sourcing and through a bulletin that they'd received yesterday from the ATF, which is the federal bureau that investigates alcohol, tobacco and firearms, and is going to be closely involved with the FBI on this. We're still waiting for confirmation on that.
Right.
But it was interesting that what started as an online rumour did end up in the highly respected Wall Street Journal. They say that it wasn't just referring to the law enforcement bulletin, the internal intelligence report that they had seen, which we'd all seen, but actually they had stood that up through alternative law enforcement sources who I presume had been able to access that information independently. I should also say one reason why that might be credible, and we don't know yet, is because some of the information elsewhere on that bulletin included a reference to the Mauser bolt-action rifle, later confirmed by the FBI.
And it does, I mean, I've seen the screenshot that is doing the rounds online. It does look like perhaps someone more junior in the level taking a photograph of something on a screen and sharing that round. But we await official confirmation, Charlie. I know as soon as we get that, you will bring it to us. Thanks indeed for joining us.
Indeed, Charlie. Yes, indeed. OK, now we are going to talk more on this story. We're joined by political commentator Jennifer Powers. Jennifer, good to see you. Obviously, we've had 24 hours. Can you just sum up the mood, the emotion, the movement on this story?
Well, good morning. Americans continue to reel from the political assassination of the beloved Charlie Kirk by many on the right of centre. And I think all Americans are filled with regret at such a horrendous killing and with compassion for his family and friends who have lost such a large figure in their lives.
I mean, it is extraordinary to take a step back and just think about the magnitude of what has gone on in what seems to be a moment of political violence. Now, we can't be sure of the motives of the killer, but we can take a darn good guess at them. And frankly, all of the things that we're hearing, all of the reporting, seems to be pointing to this being an ideologically motivated attack.
Well, by definition, I think if you're taking out the foremost organizer on the center-right in America, especially of the young, that by definition is a political killing. I think Americans they're really still quite in shock by what has happened because he is such a big figure. He has such a reputation, and regardless of what people think of his politics, he was someone who without fail was civil in his discourse, was rational in his argumentation, and was incredibly courteous in his demeanor. And I think a lot of Americans, for them, it is the MLK, the Martin Luther King, or the JFK assassination of their generation. This is something that will have an indelible mark on generations of Americans.
On that point, that is a really significant issue because at the time that MLK was shot, he wasn't the only person. RFK was shot at that point in time as well, and this was only a few years after JFK was shot. These things don't seem to happen in isolation. When one happens, you see copycats, you see a sort of a mood arise, and some commentators have been worrying that America is entering its years of lead.
And I think that concern is genuine. You're quite right. There was a horrendous cycle of political violence that started in the 60s and went through the 1970s and perhaps culminated in the early 1980s with the attempted assassination of then President Ronald Reagan. I also think that there is a sincere and widespread grief about what America might have lost, because many people on the center right feel that Charlie Kirk had such a gift at communication and at relating to people that he would have been a very powerful future candidate for president. And so whilst he accomplished a huge amount in 31 years of his life, a great many Americans feel that he had much more left to contribute, and they would have had even more profound impact on the history of America. So this political assassination it has so much significance in its horror of cutting short the life of a young father, of a media personality, but also I think it changed the trajectory of United States history, and so one can't really overstate the impact of this political assassination.
Jennifer, one final quick question for you. There is talk about the death penalty when the killer is captured. Hopefully he will be. Thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I've already heard calls from the Utah authorities who say they are preparing to ask for the death penalty when and if the assailant is apprehended. I can imagine that will be very well supported. So we'll wait and see, and hopefully law enforcement will find this suspect very soon.
Okay. Well, Jennifer Powers, thanks indeed for joining us and explaining all of that for us. We've got to move on now because it is time for the Great British Giveaway, biggest prize package to date. Here are all the details.
You're not going to want to miss our greatest Great British Giveaway so far. You could bank an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. And if that wasn't enough, you'll also get to drive away in this brand new motorhome. With thanks to Marquis Leisure, this brand new 2025 Benimar Primero could be yours. It comes with all the mod cons you'd expect from a vehicle worth over £74,000 and comfortably sleeps 4 people. This prize package is worth over £104,000. And remember, if you can dream it, you can drive it away. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. The winner will be contacted live on GB News, week commencing 10th November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
What do you think is the origin of this palace not being loved by the royal family as a place to live?
Well, you see, it's a little bit like an Edwardian hotel in Brighton. It's all long corridors and rooms off them. It's not very friendly as a place, you know. So the Queen and Prince Philip occupied the rooms along the Constitution Hill side. She had half of them and he had the other half. And if ever they came out into a corridor, you know, so it's just not very friendly. And of course, the other thing is that the gardens are now terribly overlooked by the Hilton and other big buildings, whereas the King living at Clarence House, he has a very nice garden there and it's not overlooked at all. I mean, I have seen Prince Philip's rooms because I worked with his office a lot and I did a book about his mother, so I was there quite often. I haven't seen the Queen's rooms, but I'd love to see them.
Yes. And at the beginning of Queen Elizabeth II's reign, the palace was not open to the public at all, was it?
No, it wasn't. And actually, she didn't want to go and live there either. She was living in Clarence House, but Churchill said that it was sovereign's residence and she had to move in. He forced her to move in. That was quite tricky because the Queen Mother and Princess Margaret were still living there at the beginning. And then they moved into Clarence House a little while later, somewhat before the coronation. The only reason that the palace was open as a public tourist attraction was to make money to pay for the fire damage of 1992 at Windsor Castle. And that was so successful that the opening has gone on ever since, and it raises money for the Royal Collection Trust in order to look after all the treasures which are held by the sovereign for the nation.
GB News, the People's Channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's coming up to 12:30. Now, our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, has just been inside Downing Street, that famous street, of course, speaking to the Prime Minister's spokesman. She joins us with the very latest. Catherine, what's going on?
Yes, good afternoon from Groundhog Day. It feels like Groundhog Day. Downing Street, I should say. We were just talking about it. We are 2 weeks into phase 2 of the government. Last week, there was the resignation of Angela Rayner. And this week, the sacking of Lord Mandelson as US ambassador. And everybody here is saying it just feels like Groundhog Day. Here we go again. But look, Number 10 are very keen for us to move on from this, but frankly, it's a car crash. So they are saying that the decision to appoint Lord Mandelson was a balancing exercise, that the Prime Minister made a balanced judgment based on what he saw as being in the United Kingdom's national interest. Now, they are stressing the very important role that Peter Mandelson has played as US ambassador in terms of getting that trade deal, a better deal that we've got than anybody else, and having an excellent relationship with Donald Trump. We saw that, Donald Trump saying that he was a fine-looking fellow, that he liked his accent, and so on and so forth. Peter Mandelson has been very efficient in the role, but clearly this was a big risk that they decided to take, and it worked very well, but it has now backfired hugely. So they've said still that we have an excellent relationship with the White House. They will not confirm or deny whether President Trump was spoken to about this at all. And on Morgan McSweeney, because there's been a lot of finger pointing at the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, that he was the one that really pushed for this appointment. Apparently the Prime Minister still has confidence in him and all of his top team, we are told, and we're told that the Prime Minister is getting on with the job in hand, that he took a swift decision and is now focused on the important work of delivering for working people. But of course, there's been a lot of criticism that the decision wasn't really that swift, that the Prime Minister defended Mandelson on Wednesday despite very lurid photos and details having emerged that made very clear that Peter Mandelson considered him a great friend, Epstein, this convicted paedophile, even after he had been convicted and jailed and released. That information was all there on Wednesday, but Number 10 are still saying that they had new information that came to light late on Wednesday in the form of additional emails, and that they then acted very swiftly. There was also some discussion, we asked about Karen Pierce, could she possibly be the new ambassador? And she, of course, was the US ambassador for several years prior, was widely regarded as having done an excellent job, was extremely well connected, would, we understand, have been happy to stay on. They will not be drawn on that. Also, all systems go still for the state visit, we are told. I did ask whether, Peter Mandelson is clearly very aggrieved and hitting back, and whether they were concerned about that. But no, the focus, we are told, is all on delivery. At the moment, that looks like an uphill task.
Catherine, just one very quick final question. The Mail are saying today there's an end-of-days mood around Starmer like there was with Boris and Liz Truss. Are you picking up on any of that?
Honestly, the mood is pretty dreadful. I was talking to somebody who'd had a senior post in Number 10, not there anymore though, but you know, just over a week ago when all the Angela Rayner row was going on before she actually resigned, and he was talking about this phase 2, and I said, do you think it will work? And he said, well, it's going to have to, because basically this is the last chance. So people are beginning to think what a year ago would have seemed to be unthinkable, that, you know, the Prime Minister, if he cannot turn things around, look at his position in the opinion polls, look at this phase 2 so far, will not be leading them into the next election.
Really astonishing stuff there. Catherine Forster, thanks indeed for joining us live from Downing Street.
Quite astonishing. I mean, and this is what, 14 months in?
14 months. I am just I'm on tenterhooks to see how this stuff's going to go down at Labour Party conference. It's going to be
that will be
funereal.
absolutely fascinating. Well, next month with the visit of Trump. In any case, we're moving on. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Loads more coming up on today's show, including Prince Harry making a surprise trip to Ukraine. All of that and much more, but that's all after your news headlines with Sophia.
Dawn, thank you. Very good afternoon. The latest headlines from the GB Newsroom just after 12:30. The Cabinet Minister has said that Sir Keir Starmer would not have appointed Lord Peter Mandelson if he had known the depth of his relationship with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. But he did so because he felt that he would make a good fit to work with President Trump. Over in the States, CCTV video footage of Charlie Kirk's shooting suspect fleeing the scene has been released by the FBI as the manhunt continues. The investigators are offering a $100,000 reward for any information that could lead to the identification of the gunman. Yvette Cooper has announced a raft of sanctions on Russia as the Foreign Secretary visited Kyiv for the first overseas visit in her new role. Arriving in the Ukrainian capital today, her visit follows a week of heightened tensions after Russian drones violated Polish airspace during attacks on Ukraine. Prince Harry has made a surprise trip to Kyiv with his Invictus Games Foundation after an invitation from the Ukrainian government. He said he wants to do everything possible to support the recovery of injured military staff. And seeing your doctor quickly matters more than anything else in the NHS. That's the verdict from the public in a new poll. It finds that GP access is the biggest priority, with A&E and staff retention close behind. Those are the latest headlines for now. More news at the top of the hour.
For all the latest from GB News whilst you're on the go, get the GB News app. Scan the QR code now to download or visit gbnews.com/app.
Thank you very much, Sophia. There's loads more coming up on today's show. Isn't there, Tom?
Yes, there is. Next, we'll get reaction to those disgraceful comments by a President-elect of the Oxford Union who's accused of celebrating the murder of Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, all of that and much more to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Don't go too far. We'll see you soon.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Rain and strong winds eventually easing away across western parts of Scotland, leaving a day of sunny spells and showers across the rest of the country, but a lot of eastern areas will see a mostly dry day with sunny spells. Taking a look at the bigger picture, low pressure sits to the north of the country, bringing us in a westerly flow, and at times in that westerly wind it will drag in some showers. Now many central and eastern areas should see a mostly dry day, but even here into the afternoon we could catch 1 or 2 showers, but the bulk of the showers will be across western areas where they could be heavy at times. We may even see some hail, hear the odd rumble of thunder. Temperatures around about average for this time of year, highs around 19 to 20 degrees Celsius. Then to finish off the day, there's still a risk of showers, once again particularly across Scotland. Now there are going to be lighter winds, particularly around western coasts, but even here still it's going to be quite breezy, particularly if you do catch any heavy showers towards the end of the day. Fairly similar across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, a mix of clearer spells and also some showers. Wales, southwest England too, we could pick up some showers, but central areas, parts of the south and southeast, most showers should be fairly isolated. Now, across the southern half of the UK, once again, we'll see a mix of clear skies and showers. And we've just got this longer band of showery outbreaks pushing into the far north. This could be quite heavy and blustery at times, once again, possibly with some hail and thunder. So once again, by the time we reach Saturday morning, we could see quite a wet start across parts of the north, but elsewhere we'll see a mix of dry spells and also some showery outbreaks. And that remains the theme as we begin the weekend too. This heavy band of rain eventually clearing off into the North Sea. Fair few showers still pushing into western areas, these merging together at times to bring some longer, persistent outbreaks of rain. Once again, central areas and parts of the southeast will see the best of the brightness, but still a chance of a shower here. Highs once again reaching around 18 to 19 degrees.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Traffic on the A92 northbound at Red House Roundabout is currently restricted due to a broken down vehicle, so drivers should approach with caution and allow extra time for their journey. On the M25 anti-clockwise between Junction 4 and Junction 3, a collision has resulted in the closure of 2 lanes, causing significant delays. Meanwhile, in Worcestershire, the M5 northbound between Junction 8 and Junction 7 has now reopened following an earlier road traffic incident. Stay cautious on this route. On the rail front, major disruptions continue on both Great Northern and Hull trains between Stevenage and London due to ongoing issues. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's now 20 to 1, and there's widespread outrage over the comments by the President-elect of the Oxford Union, who appeared to celebrate the murder of Charlie Kirk.
Yes, George Aboriani, who met Kirk during a debate on toxic masculinity earlier this year, made the comments on WhatsApp and Instagram.
Well, we're joined now by Dr. Julius Grower, who's Associate Professor of Law at the University of Oxford. Julius, thanks for joining us. This has caused an absolute stir online. The Oxford Union itself has distanced itself from the incoming president and the apparent views of the incoming president. This is a real crisis for an institution that is supposed to be all about respectful debate, and the incoming president of which appeared to celebrate the opposite.
Well, I mean, you raise good questions as to whether or not debate always needs to be respectful. The union exists as a forum to debate sometimes very difficult topics, and respect isn't actually always a feature of robust debate, even especially in a liberal democratic system and society. Aside from that, it may very well be a problem for the union, but it is worth saying that the union is a separate entity to the University of Oxford, and they govern themselves.
What did you make when you read these comments?
I thought they were very unpleasant. I suspect most of us reading them think they're very, very unpleasant. The issue is, when it comes to analysing people's reactions to them, that simply being unpleasant isn't cause for sanctioning someone by expelling them from the university or banning them from the union. We live in a society where, thank goodness, people are free to be unpleasant at times.
I suppose that is a principled free speech argument. I mean, it's a distasteful argument, it's principled. But is there not the argument that if someone is in a position of authority, words have consequences? If a minister in the government were to say something like that, you can bet your bottom dollar they would be out of the government tomorrow morning. They wouldn't have to resign as an MP, but they'd have to resign as a government minister. Now, people are saying that this individual, this incoming president, should resign, should be kicked out of the university. Perhaps that's too far, but surely his position as the incoming Oxford Union president, that's a legitimate point of discussion and debate as to whether he's a suitable person to be chairing those debates.
Yeah, so, I mean, we're agreed that it's definitely too far to suggest that he should be expelled from the university, or I think even just banned from the union. It seems, and I haven't seen if there's any further messages to come out, but it seems everything he said is lawful. And the idea that you might be banned from a free speech society for saying something lawful, however distasteful, is obviously absurd. you raised the question about whether he's suitable for the position. Well, I think we do need to be careful there because, as you say, obviously, to some extent, the content of one's moral character does relate to their qualification for a position. But the worry would always be that that's a portal for indirect content-based discrimination. So lots of people might say, well, I haven't got a problem with what you're saying per se, but of course, you know,
indirect content-based. Sorry. No, this man celebrated the assassination of a political activist he opposed the views of.
It was grotesque, as I say.
Yeah. So why are we mincing our words here?
Because the question is he still suitable to be president of the Oxford Union? Now, that's a task that clearly has lots of different roles. Is he unsuitable for all of those because he's expressed an obnoxious view?
Well, I think most people looking at it would say clearly yes.
Well, I would suggest there are two problems with that. One, I'm not sure most people would say clearly yes. And number two, you don't think
that most people would say clearly the celebration of the shooting of an activist with whom you disagree, someone who celebrated that, you think most people would say that's fine, you can be the president of the most prestigious debating society in the country?
I didn't say that I thought most people would say that. I objected to the suggestion that you thought most people would say that. But what I would say...
That seems like we're splitting hairs here.
Well, you invite an academic on and ask them technical questions about important points. What do you expect? What I would say is that I think that it's perfectly possible for someone absolutely appalling and obnoxious to run an organisation. I think there must be cases where that obnoxiousness goes too far, but I'm not.
But you don't think it's clear in this case that it's too obnoxious?
That obnoxiousness per se means that they're ineligible for that position. That can't be correct.
And Julius, can I just ask you one question on this? I mean, you know, universities should be about sharing opinions, debate, not hate, which is indeed what Mr. Kirk was all about. In that case, if it's about freedom of speech and you support this incoming union head to say these things, why are women like Kathleen Stock cancelled by universities for having simple views backed up by biology? Why is one lot freedom of speech and the other is you're cancelled?
So I'm someone who has gone on the record in the press often, especially about Kathleen Stock's right to speech. I'm 100% for it. I thought what happened at the union when the union were put under pressure to no platform her was awful. I wrote an open letter to the Telegraph demonstrating that and received public criticism for doing so. So I don't adopt a contradictory position. I'm with you on that. I happen to be in favour of the possibility that someone might be absolutely awful, but not kicked out of university, banned from a free speech society, or even necessarily sacked from their post as head of that society because of their obnoxiousness.
Well, Dr. Julius Grow, I really appreciate you putting across your principled case here on Good Afternoon Britain. Always good to hear those contradictory views.
The Oxford Union condemned President-elect George Arabaroni's comments, and he has apologised for his messages.
Right, well, this is Good Afternoon Britain, and if you're in search of some holiday sunshine, here's the weather.
I hope we haven't forgotten anything.
Travel insurance, I tick that box.
Yeah, but remember what you forgot last year.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
It's a mostly settled picture across much of Europe. Occasional sunshine in places, otherwise lots of sunshine. And that's the story across Spain and Portugal. Mostly settled here, plenty of sunny spells, though we could see some showers affecting Barcelona, also parts of Nice. But elsewhere across Italy, the Adriatic coastline, all the way through into Greece, it should be mostly dry, settled, plenty of sunshine. And that theme will continue as we head into next week, along with the warm temperatures. Bye-bye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world, but look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel. Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's now 10 to 1. And police failed to act on the warnings of a grooming gang abuse in Tameside. A victim has told GB News.
She has spoken exclusively to our national reporter, Charlie Peters, who can also reveal that one of her alleged abusers is now working in the public sector in the region. Lucy, not her real name, has been voiced by an actor.
You'd see cars full of men driving up and down, playing loud music, getting our attention.
20 years after she was abused by networks of men in Greater Manchester, Lucy is speaking out for the first time. It was in Hyde, a town in Tameside, where Lucy suffered at the hands of predators and where she still lives.
There was one man who always used to drive at night past us on his own. He first approached me and asked, did I want a lift home? He'd seen me at the bus stop and it were raining.
He groomed her for over a year, coercing the young girl into sexual abuse. Lucy can remember the first time he took her to his house.
I felt really uncomfortable being with him. I'm not racist, but his house smelt like curry. And all I could think of was, my mum's gonna smell this and my mum's gonna know.
Other men in Greater Manchester were involved in your exploitation as a teenager. How did this move on from this one man to wider groups?
The next man was a lot older than the other one, and he got talking to me about him. He just looked at me, shook his head, then he saw me again in Hyde, came over to me and said, don't ever approach me when I'm with my wife, and I want to give you some money, because if we've had sex and if you are pregnant, then it's got to go.
How did this then expand into a much wider network with you being trafficked out of Hyde?
I met all the others because different people would turn up visiting the takeaway. We're sat in there and it's, oh, who's this? Do you want to come for a drive with us? And one thing led to another. At 2 o'clock in the morning, beeping at the back of like my mum's house, I'd run out in my pyjamas, no shoes on, get in the car. Next minute would be in Oldham.
Lucy spent her Christmas that year in hospital. She had pelvic inflammatory disease caused by a gonorrhea infection given to her by the men. Their abuse also became more violent.
I got in the car. I said to him, please, can you take me home, please? Next minute, he backhanded me right in the face. When he saw my eye swelling, he said, you can go home now. Because they had links in Oldham, I didn't want the police getting involved because I know they were a serious community.
What do you mean by that? As in, you think they might come back after you?
Yeah, and they knew where I lived. As soon as he hit me, he was like, if you say anything to anyone, I swear to God, watch what happens.
GB News can reveal that the first man who Lucy says groomed and abused her now works within the region in the public sector. We are choosing not to name them, nor their employer.
What do you want to happen to those men who attacked you when you were a teenage girl?
I would love them to be locked up, named and shamed. I've had a horrible life growing up, and now, thinking back, they were a part of that. They need to be held accountable, and their families need to know what they did, because their families only look at people like me as trash.
Charlie Peters, GB News, in Hyde, Tameside.
Well, we must say that a Tameside Council spokesperson has said, we support victims and survivors from any time and we will work with them to access specialist services as appropriate. However, as a learning organisation, we realise there is more for us to do and are fully engaged with the peer review process.
We are always happy to work directly with families and our partners to discuss any feedback and explore where our services can be further improved. Assistant Chief Constable Steph Parker, GMP's Leave for Protecting Vulnerable People, said, we know there are survivors like Lucy whose lack of trust and confidence in us is understandably remains after we previously fell short of the help they had every right to expect from us.
I want you to know that when you are ready, we will listen and act if you want us to. We have specialist officers and support agencies working day in, day out who are here to help victims and get them long-awaited justice.
Meanwhile, we have Charlie Peters in the studio with us now. Charlie.
Yeah, and the importance of those statements, just to put into context here, the Children's Services Department in Tameside has been rated as inadequate since 2016. It was rated that way again by Ofsted in 2023. Lucy is speaking out in part because she wants to put Tameside on the map. That area has never been recognised really as part of this national grooming gang scandal. But Greater Manchester, in this area, Tameside does not exist in a force field. It's not in isolation. She wants more people to come forward and share their stories.
Charlie, thank you so much for bringing that to us. Really important story there. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Next, more chaos in the government. Will be live throughout it. Don't move a muscle.
You could bank an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. And if that wasn't enough, you'll also get to drive away in this brand new motorhome. This brand new 2025 Benamar Primero could be yours. It comes with all the mod cons you'd expect from a vehicle worth over £74,000 and comfortably sleeps 4 people. This prize package is worth over £104,000. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
And with a dynastic touch, George Martin's son, Giles Martin, is involved in all of this.
Yes, so he's the keeper of his father's flame, really, which is very touching.
It's very, very touching. How can it be? I mean, we've been talking about a band here that was playing before we were able to send pictures across the Atlantic. How can a band that is that old cause such excitement today?
Well, it's such a number of elements. They encapsulated so much of the early 20th century music. Fats Domino, Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Tim Panally through Paul McCartney's father. He grew up hearing his father playing the piano. He had a big jazz band. They played around Liverpool. So all of that music went into the Beatles' crucible. And I find it so interesting that you know, Decca get ribbed for turning them down. But those early sessions are not showing them at their best. And they say guitar bands are on their way out, but actually it took the Beatles to bring them back and show everybody a completely different scene, a completely different imagination of what guitar music can be. It took the Beatles 3 albums to really get into their stride, because their first 2, let's not forget, were sort of covers in a way. So there's a few of their own songs in there,
but a lot of covers.
But with Hard Day's Night, it's all their own tracks. And what can I say? The energy of them, the invention of them, when you watch Get Back, you see how much craftsmanship they put into constructing a completely unique song. That's the thing about the Beatles. Each song is so unique. There's no replication in any of their output.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Friday, the 12th of September. Congratulations, you made it Friday. Here's Tom Harwood and I'm Dawn Neeson.
Now, it's been a week of chaos for the Prime Minister. He's lost his deputy and his ambassador to the United States. But there are now fears that Peter Mandelson will get his dark revenge on the Prime Minister.
Yes, Peter Mandelson feels he's been treated very badly. The Prime Minister took a risk in appointing him, and now it's all going horribly wrong. I'll bring you more details shortly.
And there's more bad news for the government today. The economy didn't grow at all in July, making tax rises in November budget even more likely.
Now, America is waking up to another day of the manhunt following the murder of Charlie Kirk. This video footage shows the killer calmly fleeing the scene. Now, Utah's governor is vowing to pursue the death penalty if they can catch the man who did it.
And find out why the government's plans to close asylum hotels could lead to thousands of illegal migrants being dumped in student flats, and locals wouldn't be able to do anything about it.
We'll also catch up with Prince Harry. Yes, he's made a surprise trip to Ukraine. It's now been 2 days, well, a day and a half, since the assassination in Utah. You can travel a very long way in a day and a half.
You can, and I think the fact that the American authorities have put out those pictures of the shooter, as they say there, with as much information as they have released, it makes you wonder how worried they are that they are clueless as to who this person is.
Right. The fact that they've got a reward of $100,000 for anyone that has information, it makes you think, hang on, are they not on top of this manhunt? Are they not on top of this investigation? And that's worrying. I mean, if there is a crazed, deranged shooter on the loose in the United States who is willing to take out senior Conservative figures, I mean, could this happen again?
Well, the FBI did say yesterday, stop trying to scare people.
I'm not trying, I am simply asking questions.
Yeah, but the FBI did say yesterday they are not worried that this person is going to attack anyone else.
What do the FBI know?
Well, not a lot by the sounds of it, actually. That's a very good point. The first of the day. Congratulations. But they did say that they weren't worried, so it does make it sound like a more targeted assassination.
Yeah, but these things never come along. They're like buses. I mean,
we made that point earlier on. That was a second good point of the day, actually.
Right. So you had JFK, RFK, MLK, and then an attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan.
Who they are.
You had. What does the F in Jack Kennedy's name stand for? Is it Fitzgerald?
I think it might be, I wouldn't swear to it.
So
Jack Kennedy, Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King.
Yes. And I was reading recently about the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan, which we sort of collectively forget a bit. It came very close to killing him.
It really did.
He had to go undergo. There was someone in the trauma centre at the hospital was holding his beating heart in their hand. I mean, it was extraordinary.
And his daughter, Patty Davies, spoke very movingly overnight about what it is like to be a family member and having an assassination attempt. And she was saying, I thought this was quite poignant, Tom, she was saying that since her father's attempted assassination and the murder of Charlie Kirk, she was saying the political change and the way people are reacting to the assassination is completely a world. I mean, she was actually very emotional about the way she was talking about it, and it's quite frightening. The shift in how people celebrating the assassination.
This is extraordinary, yeah.
Move on. Anyways, let us know what you think. gbnews.com/your say, and I'll make Tom read out as many as I possibly can.
But first, it's your latest news headlines.
Very good afternoon. It's just gone 1 o'clock. These are your latest headlines. Top story, a senior government minister has said that Lord Mandelson's appointment as the US ambassador was made because Sir Keir Starmer felt that he was a good fit to work with President Trump, but that when new evidence emerged, the Prime Minister was left with no choice but to sack him. Sir Keir Starmer is under pressure for his poor judgment after Lord Mandelson admitted to long-running ties with convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein during his vetting. The Prime Minister dismissed Lord Mandelson as ambassador to Washington after damning emails emerged showing he supported Epstein even as he faced jail for sex offences. This, of course, was all less than 24 hours after the Prime Minister publicly backed Lord Mandelson in the Commons.
The relationship between the US and the UK is one of our foremost relationships, and I have confidence in the ambassador in the role that he is doing.
It's the second ministerial crisis in a week for Labour, following on from Angela Rayner's resignation over her tax affairs. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage this morning shared his concerns.
An enormously talented bloke, of that was no doubt. You know, I dealt with him when he was a European Commissioner 20 years ago. But to have appointed him to that role was a serious misjudgment from the Prime Minister. We don't yet know what the intelligence briefings would have said. But it looks as though Morgan McSweeney, the Prime Minister's right-hand man, and the Prime Minister ignored the warnings, carried on. He was then reluctant to get rid of Mandelson, and he's now left himself in a very vulnerable position.
Turning to the US, CCTV video footage of Charlie Kirk's shooting suspect fleeing the scene has been released by the FBI as their manhunt continues. The investigators are offering a $100,000 reward for any information that could lead to the identification of the gunman. The video shows someone running across the roof of a building before jumping off and walking into the street. The killer is believed to have fired the shot from the roof of a building near the courtyard, approximately 130 metres away from where Charlie Kirk was speaking. Overnight, the body of Charlie Kirk was transported to Arizona on board of Air Force 2, with Vice US President J.D. Vance and his wife travelling with the now widowed Erica Kirk. Now back in the UK, a grooming gang in Tameside went unchecked in the 2000s, and one of the perpetrators is now working in the public sector. GB News can exclusively reveal, as survivor Lucy told her story, and now concerns mount over child sexual exploitation in the borough. It raises new questions about how the council has dealt with child exploitation, with Ofsted inspectors branding its record inadequate since 2016.
He knew where I lived. As soon as he hit me, he was like, if you say anything to anyone, I swear to God, watch what happens. I would love them to be locked up, named and shamed. I've had a horrible life growing up, and now, thinking back, they were a part of that. They need to be held accountable, and their families need to know what they did.
A Tameside Council spokesperson has said, "We support victims and survivors from any time, and we will work with them to access specialist services as appropriate. However, as a learning organisation, we recognise there is more for us to do and are fully engaged in the peer review process. We are always happy to work directly with families and our partners to discuss any feedback and explore where our services can be further improved." And seeing your doctor quickly matters more than anything else in the NHS. That's the verdict from the public in a new poll. It finds that GP access is the biggest priority, with A&E and staff retention close behind. Sir Keir Starmer's plan for change pledged that by July 2029, 92% will be seen without 18 weeks for routine hospital treatment. But reducing these waiting times only ranks 5th for the public in terms of their priorities. And finally, a heartwarming tale. A cat has been reunited with its family after an astonishing 9 years apart. George, a 14-year-old tabby, was brought into the Scottish SPCA's Glasgow Rescue Centre last week, where a quick microchip scan revealed that he had been reported missing back in 2016. Because his owner's details were still up to date, staff were able to make the call that his family had never expected, and they came to collect him the very next day. George is now back at home, adjusting to his new life as a feline companion with a younger human brother. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. Before I hand you back to Tom and Dawn, let's quickly check in on the markets.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.355 and 1.155 euros. The price of gold is £2,692.24 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 9,334 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. Breaking news to bring you. President Donald Trump has said in the last couple of minutes, a suspect in the Kirk killing. This is a direct quote from the president. I think we have him. It was said in a Fox News interview.
Yeah, somebody close to him turned him to Trump. They are going to announce it. I'm just going to read this out from here, actually. I think we have him, Trump says about a suspect in Fox News interview. Trump also said they are going to announce it today. Someone close to the suspect has turned him in. We know the FBI issued those pictures of the wanted man. Suspect is being held at police quarters, and the suspect's minister and father helped in the capture.
Now, all of this is, of course, according to President Trump in an interview with Fox News. We have no further sourcing on this information. This is coming directly from Fox News. This is what we can tell you, that Donald Trump has said, I think we have him, referring to the suspect in the Charlie Kirk killing. That Donald Trump said somebody close to him turned him in. And that Trump said, he told Fox News that they're going to announce it today. They, of course, referring to the FBI and wider security services within the United States.
And this is being reported by the Reuters news agency, who are normally very, very reliable. And the details they are giving do seem quite detailed, if that's not too used to the word details. The suspect is being held at police headquarters, according to this breaking story. And the suspect's minister, religious minister, and father helped in the capture. Now, we were discussing earlier, Tom, that the FBI issuing those pictures and announcing the reward for the capture of the killer, alleged killer, made you think that they weren't quite sure who this person was. Yes. And we were talking about, you know, it's very easy in America, no state borders, to cross several states and get away. But it does sound like now that they have closed in on someone. Indeed, his own family may have handed him in.
Well, of course, we had a wealth of information being made public over the course of the last 12 hours. We've seen a picture of what we think the suspect looks like. We've seen the early movements captured on CCTV footage. We saw some Ring doorbell footage as well. No doubt the FBI has far more information than was made public. No doubt they have been seeing a lot more than we have been able to see as the general public and as the media. But crucially, what does this mean? How quickly could this move? Donald Trump is usually a fairly reliable source, but it is remarkable that the President of the United States is, in effect, leaking what is going on in American law enforcement.
But this is what Donald Trump does, isn't it? I mean, for the President of the United States to put this out there, it does seem like it is actually a fairly strong story. So let's bring Charlie Peterson on this one. Charlie, can you bring us up to date?
He's making this announcement on Fox and Friends, on an American news network. As you say, Tom, potentially leaking security information or the details from an active police investigation. But also, we have to recognise that Donald Trump considers Charlie Kirk not just a close ally of his movement, but also an inspiration to the conservative youth movement. It was Donald Trump himself who announced the passing of Charlie Kirk when he had been fatally shot, assassinated in this murder investigation 2 nights ago. So Donald Trump, you may say that he's releasing information ahead of the relevant authorities, but he clearly has a great personal attachment to this case and to Charlie Kirk himself. So he has announced that a suspect has been arrested. He says, with a high degree of certainty, we have him. He said this during a live interview just moments ago, saying somebody who was very close to him turned him in, we believe referring to the suspect, and saying that this information was relayed through a pastor who works in law enforcement. I hope he's going to be found guilty, and I hope he gets the death penalty. Those are the words of the President of the United States. I think relevant because we've heard references to the death penalty since the night of Charlie Kirk's killing, particularly from Bo Mason and other members of the authorities in Utah, the chief of public safety, they're the public safety commissioner. So the suspect in this case, allegedly believed to have fired that single shot from an elevated position about 130 metres away from the open-air amphitheatre where Kirk was sitting in a tent at the university's Losey Centre. That's the firing position. Obviously being hit in the neck. You would expect that from that distance, the shooter was firing at a centre of mass, and perhaps being a novice marksman or someone who had zeroed in their rifle at a flat range, they did not expect the rise of the round to then hit the neck. But all this information about the suspect that's been released so far, we're seeing pictures on your screens now at the moment just after the shooting when this suspect fled off the roof, jumping down, leaving a forearm imprint, a handprint, and also a footwear imprint. All the information we have is speculation based on expert testimony and deductive assessment on the scene on the ground. But now we're hearing from the President of the United States that the person you're seeing on your screen now could be in police custody, saying with a high degree of certainty, we have him.
And Charlie, it is so important to note that Donald Trump feels so personally connected to this case. As you rightly pointed out, I mean, it was Donald Trump's post on Truth Social that announced the sad passing of Charlie Kirk in the first place. We have been getting information throughout this process from President Trump before we get it from the relevant authorities in the matter, perhaps because he feels so personally connected to this, not just because he was a close personal friend of Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk, almost a sort of unofficial advisor to the president, a liaison between the White House and the wider movement, but also because Donald Trump himself came so close to death, not once but twice.
Yes, and the president has said that he's subject to be corrected, direct quote here, but that he was sharing information based on what I'm hearing and that he had just heard this information. This has come up just during a live interview in the Manhattan studio on Fox News. He's been asked the question and he didn't offer that information. It had to be asked for him then to deliver it, saying, I think we have, with a high degree of certainty, we have him in custody. President Trump then, cautioning this information at this stage. It's very early on, it's preliminary, it's, as he has said, based on what I'm hearing, and that a church minister who's also a member of law enforcement has communicated with the suspect's father and eventually was able to turn the suspect in to the authorities. The FBI have been appealing for public information, receiving thousands of tips, well over 100 on the same few hours after the attack. This is the sort of public information campaign they were hoping to pay off amid enormous pressure on Kash Patel, the director, and the deputy, Dan Bongino. Now, Trump has said that the father of the suspect drove his son to police headquarters. We don't know where that happened. We don't know if that's happened in Utah, because we heard from public safety officials in Utah speaking overnight, saying that they had no idea if the suspect was even still in the state. And then moving on in his statements just made moments ago, the president spoke more generally about Charlie Kirk, saying that his son, Don Jr., said to Trump of Charlie Kirk, he's sort of like a son to you. I think that points to the closeness and the personal tributes and also the personal delivering of information that Donald Trump is orchestrating here. President Trump also said that he didn't watch the video of Charlie Kirk being shot, and I think many of our audience can recognise and appreciate that statement themselves. I didn't want to remember Charlie that way. It's It's horrific, is what I hear, just horrific. And for those of you who haven't seen that footage, certainly agree with that assessment. Truly shocking footage. He didn't deserve this, the president said, referring to the 31-year-old Conservative activist. And he's also spoken about Charlie Kirk's widow just now, Erica Kirk, saying that he spoke to her on Thursday, saying she's devastated. But in between the devastation, they want to keep Turning Point going.
Well, that is an interesting moment to reflect on. The wider issue of Charlie Kirk, why he was such a sort of lodestar for the right in the United States.
Can I just bring this? I don't know if you've seen this bit of breaking information. Also, Charlie, Trump has also added that he hoped the suspect, if found guilty, gets the death penalty, and said they are currently being held at police headquarters. Trump said that he wasn't known whether the shooter was part of a bigger network or not. So, interestingly, the death penalty is being mentioned straight away. Obviously, as we said, Trump is emotionally connected to Charlie Kirk. I mean, he was like a son to him.
Yeah, and it was mentioned by the governor of Utah straight away in the first press conference. One of the first things that any public officials made about this thing. And I want to remind people that we have the death penalty in Utah, as the governor described the killing as a political assassination. Very strong language there from Spencer Cox, who has been the governor since 2021, a Republican, a key Trump ally. Many people very impressed by his statements since the assassination, providing in quite rushed press conference setups, the clearest sort of assessment and sort of also adding a personal element to this breaking news. But what we're hearing now from President Trump is that there is a suspect in custody, and remarkable the account that he's relaying to us. Again, not reaffirmed by the FBI or any of the other 20 state agencies working on this investigation, that the father of the suspect drove his son to police headquarters. They released that information, obviously the FBI, yesterday, including this video footage released overnight, trying to find anyone who recognised the man with the black sunglasses, the black cap, the black backpack, and the American Eagle T-shirt with the American flag on it. They released that information because clearly their visual recognition technology wasn't operating as they'd expected.
It's just an absolutely fascinating development, Charlie. Do stay with us and do stay on top of all of those developments. But you were mentioning, of course, that Charlie Kirk's widow wants this organisation to keep on running. She says that she thinks that Charlie Kirk would have wanted Turning Point USA to be continuing on, almost in his memory. And it is worth noting that he was such an influential figure for many young people on the right, not just in the United States, but around the world too. With us in the studio is Jack Anderton, a commentator associated with the Reform Party. Jack, what did Charlie Kirk mean to you?
Charlie Kirk has been around for most of my life that I've been in politics. He first sort of busted onto the scene, I think, in probably 2015, 2016 with the first Trump presidential campaign. And he was an advisor to Don Jr., who is Trump's son. And subsequently, he founded Turning Point USA, which has been described as probably the most important political organisation in America. And Turning Point USA basically sets up events and rallies and chapters across high schools, colleges and universities in America. And subsequently from that, Charlie then became, incredibly famous just by doing these tours across America in which he spoke and debated in a very civilised manner with predominantly left-wing professors and left-wing students. And the clips of that footage would then be posted online to hundreds of millions of views, and he has tens of millions of followers across his social media platform, and that's really how he got his start, and I think he's massively influenced an entire generation of young conservatives.
Now, Jack, you run Nigel Farage's TikTok page. Were you...
Well, with the team, Tom.
With the team, not just you, not just...
It's a team effort.
But now, sort of, you're behind one of the most influential sort of new media elements of British politics. Were you inspired to do that, to get going by Charlie Kirk?
I think he's definitely someone that anyone on the right who is attempting to build up a digital platform should definitely look at. And him and his team have been incredibly successful at what they did. So, for example, when I went to see him speak at the Cambridge Union, after he'd finished at the Cambridge Union, when we sat down for dinner, he was in, rabid debate and discussion with his staff about which clips and which moments should be picked out from that debate. So he was very much involved in the type of content that he would put out, and he obviously had an eye and a flair for virality.
And Charlie was one of those people that dropped out of university in America. He didn't finish his studies. So for him to be able to go and debate in Oxford and Cambridge over here and hold his own, but in a calm way, he was never shouty, he was never aggressive. Unlike many of the very well-educated cream of educational society he was dealing with.
Absolutely. I mean, you could tell he really enjoyed actually what he was doing. So at the Cambridge Union, it was a room of probably about 200 people who were, let's be honest, quite hostile to what he was saying, and he took on every single one. He didn't shy away from any question or any debate, and you could tell that their reaction to him drove him on. And actually, I think he had a better time when the audience was more hostile than not.
Now, this was not long ago, and you were sitting right there with him. Did you get a sense that he knew the risks of what he was doing? And it's horrific to talk about it in these terms, but people putting their heads above the parapet, there's a reason we use that metaphor.
Absolutely. I mean, when he was in Cambridge, I'm not sure about America, but I'm sure it's probably the same, he had a full security team of about 3 or 4 guys, and then a driver that would take him everywhere with his team. So he and his team obviously had thought very carefully about his security in Britain. And I know from the event that he was unfortunately assassinated at, there were, I think, 6 police officers on the scene, and also his private security then that you saw rush in after he'd been shot.
Jack, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we're still joined, of course, by Charlie Peters, who has been across all of what Donald Trump has said. A reminder, just in the last few minutes, Donald Trump saying that they think they have the suspect in the Charlie Kirk assassination case. Charlie Peters, what can you tell us?
Well, we're just hearing now, Tom, that Utah officials, state officials there, including the FBI and the public safety officials, and we expect the Governor, Spencer Cox, will be holding a press conference live at 2 p.m. That's UK time, so in just 35 minutes, with an update on the situation there, where we hope we'll get confirmation of what President Trump is announcing now. Further to the comments I told you about earlier, just to recap, the President has said that Charlie Kirk's killer, the suspect, is in custody, handed in by the father of the suspect, drove his son to police headquarters. The president saying, I hope he gets the death penalty, going on to say that he hadn't watched the footage of Charlie Kirk being shot, saying he didn't deserve this. Now, we've also heard further comments from the President of the United States saying that when he was asked about politicians and other political activists and commentators like Charlie Kirk, the 31-year-old, cancelling events and not continuing to engage in public discourse, President Trump says, we have to go forward. You just have to go forward. Now, Trump has said that the most recent person they've detained is looking like the person that they wanted. This comes, of course, after the director of the FBI, Kash Patel, came under very heavy criticism. It went beyond just scrutiny, frankly, to scorn, after he rushed out posts on social media to announce that they had suspects in custody on Wednesday night. Later, people released who were not found to be involved in the assassination, as described by the governor, of Charlie Kirk, with the authorities confirming at a press conference the next day that both of those people had been the subject of death threats following their detention by law enforcement agencies. Now, in terms of more information that we've got about the suspects, reports in the United States have said that the weapon that was found in the wooded area right by the Losi Centre, which you're seeing on your screens now, that's the area where the shot was fired from, which is just over the road to the right. See that parking area at the bottom of the screen? The wooded area where the rifle was found was really just, a number of metres away from those cars. Now, some reports in the United States indicate that Engravings on the ammunition found in that rifle contain transgender and anti-fascist ideology. However, other sources speaking to the New York Times have said that it might have been an early intelligence report and that they haven't actually fully understood the messaging. We'll await further information from that, and perhaps we'll get that in this update at 2 p.m. So Trump saying, I think we have him, as we continue to see that footage from his detention.
Hugely significant developments here, Charlie. And of course, we will bring that press conference in full live here on GB News in just half an hour's time. This is a significant development because we were just speculating at the start of the show about just how far this shooter could have travelled in the time since that shooting, how far they could have absconded. And yet, if we're to believe everything that we've heard from Donald Trump speaking live on Fox News, as reported by the Reuters news agency, if we're to take that at face value, then this shooter could have not run very far at all and simply returned to his parents.
Sorry, go back to
just very quickly, we're hearing from Donald Trump also say that the suspect is aged 28 or 29. Of course, during the investigation earlier, the FBI said that there was a college-age suspect, aged 20 to 25, based on the assessments they'd made following the visual evidence they had, that CCTV of the alleged shooter in the stairwell arriving to the rooftop of the Losi Centre. So previously they'd said he was of college age, but now President Trump saying 28 or 29. Obviously, the President of the United States is getting the premier enforcement agency intelligence directly to his office, which we'd expect for a case of this significance, but also one of such personal importance to the President.
Well, Charlie, we've been talking about it now for the last few minutes. Let's hear from the horse's mouth. This is what Donald Trump has had to say in the last few moments as he says the Charlie Kirk suspect is in custody.
The high degree of certainty, we have him in custody, right? In custody. Everyone did a great job. We worked with the local police, the governor. Everybody did a great job. You know, getting somebody that you start off with absolutely nothing. And we started off with a clip that made him look like an ant that was almost useless. We just saw there was somebody up there. And so much work has been done over the last 2.5 days. You know, it's amazing, actually, when you start off with that and then all of a sudden you get lucky or talent or whatever it is. But, yeah, I think we're in great shape. Mr. President. And he's in custody.
OK, for more reaction, let's speak to US political commentator John Laboutiere. John, good to see you. Thank you very much. What do you make of what we're hearing at the moment? This is live breaking news.
Well, I saw the president on TV a few minutes ago when he said it live. And, you know, I tend to believe that the FBI believes they have him and they wouldn't let the president announce it if it wasn't quite certain. He went on to say that the guy, the suspect, was turned in to a minister who knew a U.S. Marshal. And this is what often happens, you know, people suspect something and then they see something on TV and they put two and two together and then they tell someone. So I think it's great they got him. But I think the bigger story is, why is this happening so often in America? Why are people shooting each other? Why are we killing, you know, maybe people you disagree with politically? It's great to argue with them, but killing them is ridiculous. And what does it say about people? What has happened to people that they're so desensitized to life that they just want to blow a guy to death in front of 4,000 people? It's just incredible.
John, you're echoing exactly what Ronald Reagan's daughter said when she was talking about her own father's assassination, the way things have changed immensely since that attempted assassination. What do you think this will mean to America, the fact that they do have somebody now in custody by the sounds of it?
Well, I think the next day or two is going to be important to find out if we can get from this guy's social history, Facebook, all that, where's he at on the political spectrum, if he's anywhere? Is this you got to think it's a political assassination. He's either so far right that Charlie Kirk wasn't far right enough, or he's so far left that he was killing Charlie because he was a right-winger. I don't know.
Do stay with us on the line. We're just going to jump to our reporter who has some more breaking news, and we'll be back to you in just a moment. That's John Laboutiere, political commentator in the US right now. Charlie Peters, you have some breaking news for us.
Yeah, Tom, we're just hearing now American media reporting that law enforcement officials are now rushing to confirm the president's remarks on Fox News. We're hearing that a man was taken into custody at about 11 p.m. local time by Utah State and a local police. So we do believe now that this suspect was arrested in the States. There were previous concerns from the public safety officials. They had no idea where the suspect was, whether they were in the state or not. Now, the federal authorities are not releasing his name because they're still working out various leads and also conducting searches, we understand. Now, this official has been speaking to the American media, discussing details of the ongoing investigation. So continuing searches, continuing investigations, but a suspect in custody at about 11 p.m. local time in Utah.
Well, thank you very much indeed for that confirmation, Charlie. That is a significant update there. Let's return to John Laboutier, political commentator in the US. You were talking about the idea of assassination becoming a sort of commonplace again and what this says about society. You yourself were a member of Congress at the time of the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan. That was perhaps the culmination of an era of political assassination. You had JFK, RFK, Martin Luther King, the attempt on Ronald Reagan's life as well, all in the space of a decade and a half. Things seem to quiet down for 40 years, but are we returning to that dangerous pace we saw kick off in the 1960s?
Well, I think so. And by the way, we had 2 attempts on President Ford in 1875, I think it was. So there was that period from 63 to 81 when Reagan was shot. Thank God he lived. And in that year, 81-ish, not only was Reagan shot, they tried to bomb and kill Margaret Thatcher at the Conservative Conference, and Anwar Sadat assassinated. Then we've had this long period, as you say, 40 years, it seems like, with less of this. Here in America, I couldn't believe it when I heard today, and we will go over what's happened recently. We had the former Speaker of the Minnesota State House of Representatives and her husband murdered in their house. I think it was in June, right? We had Nancy Pelosi's husband brutally beaten up in their house in San Francisco a couple years ago. So there are Democrats getting shot. Steve Scalise, the number 2 guy in the House of Representatives, Republican, shot during baseball practice 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, whatever it was. It's on both sides. There are nutbags with guns thinking killing politicians is a good thing. I must have given 1 million speeches when I was in Congress. Never once did I have security, did I think I was in any danger. But if I were in Congress today, I would not do anything outdoors. And at any public indoor event, I would demand that everybody get screened and don't get in a room unless they are checked for having a gun.
John, that's a terrifying thing to say for American democracy, that you're so frightened to speak out on whatever the subject happens to be for fear of your life. Why is it going so wrong in America? What's happening?
The country, unlike your country, America is awash in guns. Anybody can get as many guns as they want. And that's okay for 95% of people who are not going to do anything bad with that gun. But there's a few percent. Yeah. My father used to say 1 out of 10 people are nuts. And maybe it's more now.
Although John, we are talking in a country, we've had 2 members of parliament assassinated in the course of the last decade, both with knives.
Yep. Well, knives. But knives, that's different. It does happen. I personally am less worried about some guy getting close to me and knifing me. Can happen. But this thing, the guy was 600 feet away. No one even knew he was there,
To be fair, John, I mean, America has always had guns. I mean, that you have more guns than people. And that's been the case for a while now. What is different about now? What is different about this period of time that we are living in where people like you would be frightened to speak in public?
Well, I'm going to guess that what have we seen in these 40 years? The internet, number one. The rise of things that are broadcast and transmitted through the internet to your phone, to you, wherever you are, that can incite crazy stuff in people's heads. Misinformation, hateful stuff, the whole thing. You combine that with an unstable person who has access to a rifle, and you've created a ticking time bomb.
Well, John, it's been absolutely fascinating to talk to you and get your perspective on what seems to be going on in the United States at this moment in time. John Laboutier, political commentator, former congressman, thanks indeed for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Charlie Peters remains with us in the studio. We're still waiting for this 2 o'clock press conference. Charlie, remind us, what are we expecting to hear officially confirmed from the United States authorities?
It's remarkable, isn't it? Usually you'd expect, in an orchestrated and planned and meticulously organised news conference, these sorts of announcements to be made. They've got a suspect in custody for one of the most high-profile political assassinations of the last 50 years. But instead, the President of the United States has just announced this news following a question live on TV news, on Fox News. It's a remarkable situation and points to just how unconventional Donald Trump is as the president. But what he's said in the last 20 minutes or so is that the father of the suspect handed this suspect into the police. We've heard from law enforcement officials speaking off the record ahead of this announcement that a suspect was taken into custody at about 11 p.m. last night, that's Utah time, by state and local police. Now, the apparent capture of the person that's associated with this assassination of Charlie Kirk being announced in this way has caught us all totally off guard. I mean, even the American news networks didn't expect President Trump to say this. It shocked people in the studio as well.
Shall we have a look at what Trump actually had to say live on American TV? Have we got that clip?
The high degree of certainty, we have him in custody, right? In custody. Everyone did a great job. We worked with the local police, the governor, everybody did a great job. You know, getting somebody that you start off with absolutely nothing. And we started off with a clip that made him look like an ant that was almost useless. We just saw there was somebody up there. And so much work has been done over the last 2.5 days. You know, it's amazing, actually, when you start off with that and then all of a sudden you get lucky or talent or whatever it is. But, yeah, I think we're in great shape. Mr. President. And he's in custody.
Charlie, that's quite astonishing to have the president sitting live on TV talking about this like that.
I mean, I almost was hoping he might indicate some of the intelligence gathering, the collection and processing strategies that the FBI and local authorities have been going through, because he talks about how, you know, it's remarkable the sort of analysis and capture of information that these agencies can go through. We know that the FBI, you know, the biggest domestic law enforcement agency in the world in terms of funding, in terms of capability, they can do extraordinary things with very little information. But for a long time, it did look like they were panicking because they had all this footage and they were releasing more and more of it as time went on, clearly hoping for more public engagement. And it seems, from what the President of the United States has said, that public engagement led to this suspect being taken into custody, saying that the suspect's father helped to turn him in. So Trump said that the person went to the father, who went to a US Marshal, another domestic law enforcement agency, and who he describes as fantastic, and said that this person, who is presumably the one who recognised the suspect, was a person of faith, so a church minister or a pastor. And then that father convinced the son to go in. So Trump has said that his account may need to be adjusted and corrected, and we have a press conference coming live at 2 p.m. where hopefully some of that information will be confirmed. And he's described that he's explaining the situation based on what I'm hearing. Now, obviously, the information that will be disseminated would have been tightly packaged and organised by these officials. A very careful art of law enforcement and intelligence efforts is to release what you want the public to know at that stage, not everything that's available. And we've seen the FBI do that over the last 2.5 days. So it's possible that the president has released more information than the officials were hoping to release themselves at 2 p.m, particularly the relationship between those involved in handing in this suspect, because we do know that there are further searches going on, further leads to follow, and what information Trump has released could be related to that.
And yet now, because of the way in which Donald Trump has released this information, this press conference will have to address everything that he's said.
Yes, that's right.
They will now have to, perhaps, release more information and earlier than they were planning to.
it's possible that they'll stick to their original script, but the questions from the press back in there, I mean, they've really drilled into some precise issues. They're going to repeat anything that Trump misses out directly to them. So, Tom, you're absolutely right. They're going to be forced to engage with it one way or another. And we've also been told by President Trump that the suspect is 28 or 29. Originally, the FBI and local state officials said the suspect was of college age, referring to the fact that they were able to blend in with the crowd, arriving at around 11:52 onto campus before fleeing after the shot was fired around 12:20 local time, just after midday. And that's what you're seeing on your screen now, the moment just after 12:20, when this suspect fled over that open field, across that road and into a wooded area where the bolt-action rifle was found. We've heard from leaked information from law enforcement officials and intelligence analysts, we believe, at the ATF, the Firearms Bureau that's working with the FBI, that some of the ammunition found at that rifle could have been engraved with a transgender or anti-fascist ideology. However, other sources in the US law enforcement agencies telling the New York Times that could just be a preliminary misunderstanding of those engravings. We're still waiting for confirmation on that. Perhaps those law enforcement officials will comment on that element as well. That's what I was hoping for, some further guidance on the motive, perhaps, in this investigation with the information they have. But any question about assessing that will now be, I think, further down the priority list of the intelligence requirements that they'll need to announce following the amount of information that Donald Trump has put into the public sphere with this information. I mean, the description of what he's given, the suspect's father helping to turn him in, it's a really astonishing scenario. And it goes to show that with the public engagement campaign that the FBI has gone on the last couple of days, that information clearly has gone straight to the family involved based on what Donald Trump is claiming.
That level of detail is quite amazing, that the suspect's father drove him into custody. I mean, if we're talking a young man of 28, 29 years old, according to Donald Trump, that it sounds like after shooting Charlie Kirk, he literally went home.
Well, that could be the case. We don't know.
Obviously, we don't know. We're just speculating, but it's quite astonishing, the level of detail that Trump has given us.
But also the fact that you'd go home and immediately tell your parents what you did. I mean, it's all very strange, and it points to perhaps a very disturbed individual.
Yeah, but we still, obviously, based on the account that Donald Trump has given us, it seems like this suspect was recognised by somebody else, and this person was a person of faith. And then that person went to the father, who then went to a US Marshal, and then the father then convinced the son to come in. So loads of different people involved in recognising this individual on the screen, we believe, is connected to the person who was arrested last night at 11 p.m. local time in Utah. But so many different characters being referred to here by the President of the United States. It could be that what he's heard and what he has said, there's a mix-up there perhaps, but he's referring to US Marshals, the father, and then also this church minister being involved. Quite a convoluted account of what happened.
It is interesting that there's a church minister involved, given that we know that Charlie Kirk had a very, very strong faith.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, Utah is a very religious state. That's certainly, it's very well known, Utah, for being particularly religious. It is the state where the Church of the Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or the Mormons, you know, the cultural influence of Mormons in Utah is ginormous. It's a significant portion of the population there, so it's a very religious state. And you could see that from also the crowd that Charlie Kirk had gathered at Utah Valley University on Wednesday night. Thousands there in attendance. He puts his faith right at the forefront of his political activism. He talks about the foundational ideals of the United States being Christian, referring to the number of times that God is mentioned in various declarations and the formation of the nation as well, Tom and Dawn. So very interesting that religiosity is mentioned in this account of his capture. This
it's
suspect.
also a state that has a death penalty, isn't it?
It is a state that has a death penalty, and that is also what Donald Trump has been referring to in his interview with Fox and Friends earlier this afternoon. And it's also something that Utah state officials have been very keen to announce. Straight away, Spencer Cox, the governor of Utah, before they had any information publicly released on the suspect, when all we knew about this situation was stuff leaked online, live feed showing someone fleeing from a roof. The Utah governor, Spencer Cox, saying, and by the way, we have the death penalty in Utah.
Which is just extraordinary when you think about that car journey. if we're to believe what Donald Trump said, no reason we shouldn't, that the suspect's father drove their son to the police station knowing that the politician, the governor of the state and the president of the United States will do everything in their power to have his son killed. I mean, what an extraordinary situation there. But perhaps not surprising that there was a religious figure, a pastor, a minister involved in recognising, given the societal structural setup of Utah, if the suspect is a Utah native and is was born and grew up in this area, perhaps that sort of order of events, a religious figure recognising, going to the father confronting, and then taking that individual to the police station, perhaps that makes all the sense in the world.
Yes, and in the account that he's given, and we should say again that President Trump has said that he is subject to be corrected at this press conference we're expecting in just 12 minutes. But based on what he was hearing, that's how he's termed it, that a minister who was also a member of law enforcement, communicated with the person's father. So someone that was very close to him, this is a direct quote, that's him. So clearly recognised this suspect based on the information that was released. And isn't it remarkable, Tom and Dawn, when you think about the advanced stage that we have in facial recognition technology, that based on what we've heard so far, it's someone recognising that quite low-quality CCTV image of someone wearing sunglasses, a hat, and really you can see perhaps 40-50% of the face, because the glasses are quite large and it's just the bottom half of the face that's in shot. It's very hard to recognise someone by their jaw, perhaps, but with the wider frame, the fact that the clothes weren't very loose-fitting could have helped give away an indication of the suspect's build and their elevation, their heights, as they put it. When law enforcement officials go through a phase called A to H, which would be age, build, clothing, distinguishing features, elevation, face, and then hair. Hair not visible there, obviously. Clothing, very much the case. A build very clear because of those tight-fitting clothes. The age, one of the key pieces of information they put out so quickly, was 20 to 25. Distinguishing features, perhaps it was that look to the cheek, that line of the jaw. That could have been something that helped bring them out. And when it comes to the face, obviously white, that's obviously what they're giving away as well. But the elevation, I think when you look at the CCTV released, it does show someone of a reasonable height. And the footage you're seeing as well, that would really help someone close to someone recognise them. I think those are quite distinguishing. And then we've got the hair, obviously the cap covers the front, but the information they showed on the back, dark hair with a flat cropped cut. If the suspect wanted to evade being identified, if that was their natural hair colour and style, that would have been really key information for someone to identify them.
The other thing that was interesting, Charlie, is wearing very distinctive clothing. That sweatshirt with, ironically, the American flag on it, the eagle. It wasn't like someone wanted to blend into the background and was wearing just black.
Although I wonder if that was worn deliberately as perhaps a disguise, as to fit in with the audience. We should say that we're looking now at the podium for this press conference live in Utah, now less than 10 minutes away, where we're expecting to hear this official confirmation and further details of the suspect in custody.
Charlie.
Well, we're having really mixed reports now because Donald Trump said that the suspect is 28 or 29, but I'm just hearing from our producer, Pat McCormack, that the suspect in the Charlie Kirk shooting is a 22-year-old Utah man, and that's coming from the New York Post, citing law enforcement. So already there are well-sourced claims in the American media going against the account given by the President of the United States live on Fox and Friends. And he said that he was making his claims based on what I'm hearing. It's possible that he misheard the age, but to have a very striking difference between the age announced by the President of the United States and what local law enforcement are reportedly telling American media now, since that announcement, that's quite striking. It will call into question the further account will be given. Luckily, we do have that press statement coming in just 9 minutes or so. You can see, in quite a contrast to the hastily organised setup we had on Wednesday night, we've got those flags of Utah and then the national flag in the background there, proper podium. We see a law enforcement official going in front. There will be a briefing wildfire going on right now in the offices of the FBI, in their Salt Lake City field office, the special agents based there. The amount of focus on them from the media for the last 2.5 days has been second to anything they would have experienced in their careers. And it's quite interesting, actually, Tom and Dawn, the amount of information that has been released, both officially and unofficially, those conflicting accounts of what was found at the rifle. We do know, obviously, there are millions of state employees in the United States, and many of them will have access to intelligence that's shared beyond the bureaus. The classification system, they're very strict in the United States, of course, but when a bureau like the ATF, dealing with firearms, and the FBI have intelligence reports, it's likely they'll be able to be accessed by agencies right across the country. So a lot of information was floating around before President Trump made that statement live on television within the last hour.
I can't help but compare this to the amount of information we received after the assassination attempt on Donald Trump himself. There was zero information there.
Yeah, I think in part because of how the authorities there were really in a panic about, and of course there was so much criticism of the Secret Service after that incident that they reacted quickly in that incident to neutralise and kill the person on the firing position, which was far further away than from where Charlie Kirk was shot on Wednesday night. However, because there was a suspect quickly shot and killed in that case, the amount of information they had to give away was quite limited. We did hear that the person there was a registered Republican the same night, I believe, so they got personal information out into the public realm.
So much contradictory stuff online, and
so
the fact that this individual had no social media presence, it was all very, very strange. But here we are looking at this room, the room where actually the three of us were reporting when that first news conference happened. It looks like exactly the same room. They, of course, took a host of questions from the journalists in the room. It looks like they're setting up now in order to make sure that this goes smoothly. Charlie, you have more information.
Yeah, more updates coming in with law enforcement officials, again speaking on condition of anonymity to media, saying that the man currently being questioned by law enforcement as part of the investigation into what's been described as assassination of Charlie Kirk, was arrested about 250 miles southwest of the campus where Kirk was killed. Of course, these are unconfirmed reports, but they are being carried by reputable outlets in the United States. He was arrested in St. George, Utah, which is near the Zion National Park. Now, just looking at the map now, that is very open area, far away from 250 miles away from where Charlie Kirk was shot. It does feature a main route there, Route 15, so it could have been a direct drive from that location, but we have very limited understanding of where he moved immediately after the shooting at Utah Valley University. From what we did see from the information released from the FBI and from some Ring doorbell footage, that he was seen running away through neighbourhoods immediately after, and that is a briefing that the authorities put out at the time. So where he went from after there, we don't know, but information currently being shared by law enforcement officials, being reported in the United States, is that this suspect, who is being described as 22 by officials and 28 or 29 by the President of the United States. This official was detained 250 miles southwest of the location where the shooting took place.
It's interesting to note there is a direct freeway that runs exactly from Route 15, exactly, which actually, I mean, St. George, I'm just looking here, St. George, Utah, very close to Las Vegas, much closer to Las Vegas than it is up to Salt Lake City and the university where the shooting happened.
It's also a very remote area. It's a very small population there. It's not a big town. It's literally in the middle of the desert. So it's very interesting to find out more. And if you are just joining us now, we are waiting to hear from the press conference. The suspect who shot and killed Charlie Kirk is in custody after more than 42 hours on the run. And this is according to the President Donald Trump, who said this live on Fox and Friends TV show. We are waiting to hear as many details as we possibly can from this press conference. And I believe we have a live guest now we can throw to. Yes, US political journalist Laurie Laird. Laurie, good to see you. Can you bring us up to date on what you're hearing your end?
You know, I'm piecing things together in the same way you are. It's interesting that this news came from an interview that Donald Trump gave to Fox and Friends. It's one of the news outlets that he likes speaking to. Typically, we get this sort of information from the FBI, from law enforcement, and I think there was a bit of a hint that something was afoot when this press conference was called. This press conference, which is about to start in the next couple of minutes here. I'm just looking at my clock, scheduled to start in 5 or so minutes. Sometimes these things morning start a little bit late. This was only as 2:30. I'm hearing from you guys, and we're seeing that they're setting up there. But this was called about an hour ago, a little bit less than an hour ago, after a press conference was postponed last night. So it did give us a sense that something was afoot, that there was something concrete to be announced to the public. Donald Trump seemed to preempt that a little bit with the interview that he gave this morning. Now, as you said, get a little bit of confusion about the age of the person who has been taken into custody. What I'm seeing from a number of reputable U.S. news outlets is that the person was turned in by the suspect's father, who spoke to either a minister or a minister who is also a law enforcement officer, and that's how this came to be. I'm reading that, I'm hearing that the father secured his son before he was taken into custody, and that suspect is being questioned at the moment. Don't have much more of a sense of that, and I think one thing that we're all very keen to hear about is what was the motive? You know, was this a political motive? We've made assumptions about that, and Charlie Kirk was so politically active that the mind would go there immediately. But we don't have a great deal of information
as to that.
yet.
But Laurie, I think I should just clear something up. We are still expecting this press conference at 2 o'clock,
right,
not
okay.
at 2:30. There were some suggestions.
It's now 2:30.
It is now 2:30. I apologise.
Is it?
We are expecting this now at 2:30. Clearly, a lot to clear up here because there have been some strange sort of discrepancies between what law enforcement is saying and what Donald Trump said on the sofa of Fox and Friends.
Well, and it's unusual to get the president to be sort of the original source of news in something as sensitive as this. And remember, on the night that Charlie Kirk was assassinated, it was Donald Trump who first broke the news. The news came out that he had been shot in the neck and that things looked very, very grim. But it was Donald Trump announcing Charlie Kirk's death on Truth Social a couple of hours after the initial incident. So Donald Trump is taking the lead here. And certainly the Trump family and the Vance family, the second family, have been very clear about their affection for Charlie Kirk, for the entire Kirk family. And in fact, we all saw images of J.D. Vance and his wife flying on an airplane with Charlie Kirk's casket with the family going from Utah back to Arizona.
J.D. Vance actually cancelling a planned visit to New York for a 9/11 memorial to fly
Absolutely.
to Utah instead.
And I was about to point that out. It's a sensitive time in U.S. history, and some of those memories, particularly for people in New York, in Washington, D.C., those memories of 9/11 are still extremely fresh. And most people who live in the 5 boroughs of New York knew somebody who was deeply affected by the events of 24 years ago on 9/11. So it was an interesting choice, and certainly a choice that I think maybe some will query, particularly in New York, which is a very democratically oriented community.
And Laurie, how is America reacting as a whole? What is the? I mean, it would never happen over here, but your president announcing on TV that a suspect has been arrested. I mean, is this the sort of thing you expect? I mean, are you reeling a bit like we are over here?
I very much reeling, and it seems I can't describe why, but it does seem slightly inappropriate, simply because we're not clear. Donald Trump isn't in the room where a suspect is being interrogated, so it does seem a little bit surprising. And it means that there's an incomplete set of information out there. And of course, when there's an incomplete set of information, people tend to speculate, people tend to make judgments that turn out not to be accurate down the line. And this is such a sensitive incident already. So to see that the top political brass weighing in on this ahead of law enforcement is a little bit confusing. Now, something else that Donald Trump said that I found slightly concerning is he blamed Charlie Kirk's assassination on left-wing radicals. And this sort of rhetoric, I don't think helps the situation right now. America has a long history of political violence, without a doubt. We have certainly seen an uptick in that over the past year, but we have seen it from political extremists on both sides.
Yeah.
We only have to go back to June when those 2 state senators in Minnesota were shot, and we know that the person who was
although there has been a
apprehended.
lot of speculation upon the motive of this assassination. No doubt we will hear more at that press conference. But Laurie Laird, thank you so much for joining us and talking us through this extraordinary time in American politics.
OK, good afternoon, Britain. It's just gone at 2 o'clock on Friday, the 12th of September. Here's Tom Harwood and I'm Dawn Neeson.
Well, as we've been saying, that breaking news. In the last hour, Donald Trump has said the suspect of the shooting of Charlie Kirk has been caught and was taken into custody by state and local police last night.
Well, I hope he was going to be found guilty, I would imagine, and I hope he gets the death penalty. What he did, Charlie Kirk was the finest person. He didn't deserve this.
The news was confirmed by the US president during an interview on Fox News. Quite astonishing scenes there, where he said the man was handed in by his father. We're now also hearing reports that the man was a 22-year-old from Utah. We'll be going live to a press conference in Utah shortly, so please don't go anywhere.
The most extraordinary afternoon of news. What we thought was a manhunt, what we thought was a clueless Federal Bureau of Investigations, turns out Donald Trump says they think they've got their guy.
Yes, the person has been in custody. He is a man either in his early 20s or his late 20s, depending on which source you are listening to. Donald Trump said a man of 28, 29. He's a local Utah resident, and he went, assuming, from what we are hearing, he allegedly killed Charlie Kirk and then drove home and confessed to his father, who, following the advice of their local minister, called the authorities to arrest him. I mean, this is quite an astonishing developing story. I don't think I've heard of anything like it in many, many years of covering crime stories. It
really,
is
really
quite
astonishing. But of course, we are getting some contradictory information,
Indeed.
and most of this is going off what Donald Trump was recalling on the sofa of Fox and Friends. Now, he said, "This is what I'm hearing. We do not know some of this for certain. We will be hearing in 25 minutes from the authorities in a prepared statement, and there will be questions from the media there as well. Crucially, there'll be questions so that we'll be able to clear up any of these discrepancies over the course of that press conference."
Yeah, but the Charlie Kirk suspect is in custody, and we will be bringing you live that press conference, which we believe now is happening about 2:30 UK time. So I think let's get some news headlines before we go to that one, shall we?
Let's have a look at what Donald Trump had to say in the last few moments. This is what the President of the United States said on the sofa of Fox and Friends.
The high degree of certainty, we have him in custody, right? In custody. Everyone did a great job. We worked with the local police, the governor. Everybody did a great job. You know, getting somebody that you start off with absolutely nothing. And we started off with a clip that made him look like an ant that was almost useless. We just saw there was somebody up there. And so much work has been done over the last 2.5 days. You know, it's amazing, actually, when you start off with that and then all of a sudden you get lucky or talent or whatever it is. But, yeah, I think we're in great shape. Mr. President. And he's in custody.
Well, that was the extraordinary moment there on the sofa of Fox and Friends. With us in the studio is Charlie Peters, our reporter here, who correspondent, I should say, who has been following this very closely. There are some discrepancies between what Donald Trump said there on the sofa and what law authorities have been saying as well. What are those?
Well, so many different briefings coming out right now, least of all from the most powerful man in the world, saying that from what he's heard, someone close to the killer's family told the suspect's family, told their father what had happened, and that their father drove in their son to law enforcement. But we're also being told that this suspect was arrested some 250 miles southwest of Utah Valley University, where this fatal assassination, as it was described by the governor of Utah, took place on Wednesday night in an area called St. George by a national park, 250 miles southwest. As you were saying earlier, Tom, that is a direct route on a freeway, a highway there, a Route 15 going from that location. So a realistic possibility that the suspect had driven there, according to those law enforcement sources. Now, President Trump said the suspect was aged 28 or 29, but within about 15 minutes of him making that statement live on Fox News, law enforcement sources in the United States telling reporters that actually this suspect is a 22-year-old. Again, we're waiting for official updates at a briefing at 2:30 with officials. But I think it's worth recapping some of the footage you're seeing on your screen now, and also some of the intelligence and information that's been revealed by the FBI and other associated bureaus and agencies since Wednesday night. This has been the most extraordinary footage, I think, which is the moment the suspect and the person of interest jumped from that roof, leaving behind, we believe, a forearm imprint, a handprint, and also a footwear imprint, which would have helped them gather an understanding of the suspect.
Well, this is the extraordinary thing, is it not? The lengths to which this individual went to make sure that they weren't caught. I mean, running from the scene, jumping off a really quite high rooftop there to jump from as an individual there. That's a couple of stories up. And then discarding a firearm, travelling, we think, 250 miles. This is someone who did not want to be caught, did not want to become a sort of symbol. Some of these people who might go out and carry out an assassination sort of want to be caught, want to become a martyr, want to do... This was someone who wanted to go back, presumably, to their ordinary life. Extraordinary, then, that they would just be handed in by their father, that this individual would almost voluntarily go to a police station in the last few hours. I mean, I can't quite make those two things compute in my head.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll get further information at 2:30, but I think the reason why that press conference has been delayed by half an hour is pure speculation, but I think it's highly likely that they were intending to speak at 2 o'clock, and then the most powerful man in the world made a few statements, and they have to now go away and reassess what they're going to say and how they're going to say it. In particular, I think because this press conference is being delivered by the director of the FBI, Kash Patel, it's a political appointment. In contrast to what happens in the UK, these positions are announced by the president, and it's with the power of the president that senior role is given. Kash Patel has been under the most scrutiny of his life for the last 2.5 days because, frankly, the FBI did not catch this person very soon after, and the field office from Salt Lake City was on scene within the hour, we're told. But Kash Patel rushed to announce 2 suspects in custody and then had to, you could sense with some embarrassment, confirm they'd been released and were no longer wanted in connection with the incident. He now has the unwelcome experience of potentially going on a press conference watched by millions around the world to say the president just got it wrong in what he said on Fox and Friends in the last hour. No, sorry, not 28 or 29, but actually 22. Or perhaps correcting some of the accounts that Donald Trump gave live on television. And because he's a political appointee and because he's been under that most extraordinary scrutiny and scorn, I don't think he'll be enjoying that very much. And I think there's a potential that he'll also have to release information that they were not intending to release. Regardless of the veracity of what President Trump has said, he has said so much. And these law enforcement officials, we understand that the investigation continues, as you might expect. Search is ongoing, search warrants reportedly being made on various locations, likely connected to the people who've brought this suspect into custody, if we believe the president's account. And then also, they'll want to investigate various other avenues of investigation. They'll be deploying, analytical techniques that won't even be in the public domain. And potentially never will be in this investigation. And so they don't want any of those leads to be scuppered or interrupted by the information that the president has put out, and they will have to assess what they're able to say now. And Kash Patel giving that statement, the pressure on him is enormous because he did say initially that a person of interest was said to be in custody on Wednesday evening, and they were later released. That's what Kash Patel confirmed. And they said, our investigation continues and we will continue to release information in interest of transparency, which, in fairness, they did very quickly. Footage being released and in increasing signs of what's been described as desperation by some critics of this operation. They did also announce a $100,000 reward for information as they were taking in thousands of tips of public information coming into them. Now, what Trump said around an hour ago, he said that he thinks with a high degree of certainty we have him in custody, referring to the possible suspect. He said he couldn't go too far with sharing details, but he went very far with sharing details, saying that somebody very close to him recognised the person on your screen right now, we believe, saying that's him. He said that he was subject to be corrected, so he sort of gave a condition against what he was saying live on that sofa in Manhattan, saying, but based on what I'm hearing and that what he had just heard, a minister, a church minister, who was also a member of law enforcement, communicated with the person's father. Now, it has been reported that this person is a US Marshal. For those who aren't aware, the Marshal Service, it's a federal law enforcement agency, goes right across the country. It's one of many law enforcement domestic agencies in the United States that has nationwide jurisdiction. Air marshals are well known in the popular consciousness as well, of course, and there are some 94 US Marshals, but 10,000 deputy US Marshals and criminal investigators. We don't know the level of seniority of this person reportedly involved in notifying, reportedly, this suspect's father. Remarkable that I'm checking against sources and what's being reported against the account given by the President of the United States.
It's quite astonishing.
Well, Charlie, thank you indeed for continuing to check what these law enforcement sources are saying. We will, of course, be getting that full breakdown at 2:30. More is coming out all of the time.
Absolutely.
Do not move a muscle. But let's speak now with the chair of Republican Overseas UK, Greg Swenson. Greg, first of all, your reaction to the extraordinary scenes of the President of the United States sort of pontificating on the Fox and Friends sofa, and that's how we're getting most of the information we're talking about now.
Well, you made a good point a few minutes ago. He is really transparent. I mean, not just Kash Patel, the entire administration, starting with the president. So they're being really candid. My guess is they had this person, I bet they had this guy, a day ago or earlier today, and I'm not surprised, or maybe even late last night, because they had his pictures. And so I can't imagine how they would have, not really captured him quickly.
Greg, were you surprised when you heard what Trump had to say?
Not really, because President Trump he's disruptive, he's provocative, he's unorthodox. So I think the administration, his cabinet, if they can get him to be the delivery mechanism of some really interesting breaking news, why not? This is the most candid and transparent administration perhaps ever. And so it doesn't really shock me.
Greg, Charlie was very close to Donald Trump, was very key in his election. How do you think the death of Charlie Kirk would have affected the president personally?
Yeah, I think it's affected him greatly. I mean, he's not only really saddened by it, but I completely understand why he's angry about it too. And so, especially, thinking about Charlie's widow and 2 young children. It's just absolutely tragic and devastating. So the president, I know, was very close to him. I've met Charlie a few times, but I wasn't, close with him. But he was really inner circle with this White House. Good friends with Don Jr., good friends with Vice President J.D. Vance. I mean, this is a great loss for everybody, but it's especially, obviously Charlie's family, but for the Trumps, absolutely.
Do you think that might have prompted him to behave how he did on Fox News today and make this announcement?
Well, of course. I mean, I don't think he would have made that about a lot of other ongoing cases in the U.S. right now. I mean, this one's personal. And, I think Charlie had such a great appeal to not just to conservatives. I mean, he actually was able to persuade a lot of young people to lead a better lifestyle, embrace traditional American values, and many of them moved to President Trump's column in the last election. So, but it's not just the election results. I think they had a really close personal relationship, and it doesn't surprise me that the president's really saddened by this.
This is, of course, one of those moments that will be looked on as a profound, perhaps, moment of change during this presidency, when we're recalling in years to come the things that happened during the second term of Donald Trump. This could be one of those absolutely profound moments for one of two reasons. I mean, the fear is this begins an era of greater political violence. The fear is that political assassinations rarely come alone, that this would come along with more and more in the months or years to come, as we saw in the 1970s and 60s with those assassinations of huge political and social figures in the United States. Is that now a genuine risk that is being spoken about?
Well, it's really hard to predict. I mean, yes, as it turns out, the 60s was, is remembered by many, for the assassinations, the three assassinations, JFK, RFK, and Martin Luther King Jr. But there was a lot else going on at that time. There were riots in the street, there were massive anti-war protesting, a lot of crime, and as I said, a lot of rioting. And so in 1972, when Richard Nixon ran basically on a law and order platform because people were so upset about the riots and the crime, and he won 49 states. And so, in a massive landslide. So I don't think that's happening here. I think this is, we're having difficulty with, political discourse, that's for sure. I think the radical progressive left has lost their minds in the way that they behave. And I do think this could be, quite the opposite. This could be the beginning of, more free speech, more dialogue, more let's make the argument, let's have some persuasion like Charlie was doing, as opposed to just calling each other names on Twitter. So I think there's an opportunity here. I was asked this morning on GB News if I thought there would be, a kind of retraction or a reduction in free speech and debate and dialogue. And my answer is no. I think there's going to be more. And you see this from Megyn Kelly. You're seeing it from Ben Shapiro, who's announced that he's going to take Charlie's place on the university circuit. So people are courageous. No one's backing down, including me.
OK, Greg Swenson, thank you very much. That's Chair of Republicans Overseas, Greg Swenson. Charlie, you've got some more breaking news for us.
Yeah, reports coming out of the United States now naming the suspect in Charlie Kirk's assassination as Tyler Robinson, a 22-year-old Utah resident. These are just initial reports. This hasn't been confirmed by any official law enforcement agencies in the United States, but we're being told that a 22-year-old called Tyler Robinson was taken into custody last night and is the suspect who Donald Trump announced as being taken into custody last night, where Donald Trump said that someone very close to the suspect, now being named in reports in the United States as 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, with sources telling outlets that the alleged killer, confessed to his father, who was a near 3-decade veteran of the sheriff's department in the local area, and then his father then spoke to law enforcement agencies and ensured that he could be taken into custody. We understand that he was detained 250 miles southwest of where Charlie Kirk was fatally shot. That's Utah Valley University. That's the location on your screens now where this suspect fled across a field and then before depositing the bolt-action rifle in a wooded area. Now, other reports suggesting, unconfirmed at this time by official agencies, but multiple sources saying that the suspect was detained at an area where he lived, so possibly family home, but 22-year-old Tyler Robinson in custody, as per sources in the United States, detained by his father until the police arrived. An extraordinary update, and also directly contradicting some of the claims made by the President of the United States, who said that the person detained was 28 or 29, but sources now saying that the father of 22-year-old Utah local Tyler Robinson was turned in by his father. And President Trump said, I think we have a high degree of certainty we have him, during his 8 a.m. US time, New York time interview on the Fox and Friends network. He said somebody who was very close to him turned him in, revealing that the suspect's dad was informed via a minister who was involved in law enforcement. That's what Donald Trump is saying. We may get a further understanding in about 10 minutes' time when this press conference is due to take place, almost certainly delayed due to the information released by Donald Trump. But this presser will be led by the FBI Director, Kash Patel. We should also say that Kash Patel, I mean, he's come in for a lot of criticism over the last 2.5 days, but the White House has defended Patel's conduct and his handling of the investigation into the killing of Charlie Kirk. The White House has put out a statement via an official saying that Director Patel is working day and night on this case. Anyone who doubts his resolve and dedication, especially when Charlie was such a close friend to him, simply is using this extremely sad moment in disgusting act of political gamesmanship. The focus is justice, and this killer will face the full wrath of the justice system.
Now, some of that criticism was because of those 2 early arrests in this process, which Kash Patel was keen to emphasise, to promote, perhaps showing his inexperience in the role. He has not been FBI director for long. He wasn't previously in the agency. He was a political appointment rather than someone that came from within the agency being promoted upwards. Those 2 early arrests now look really quite erroneous.
Yeah, I mean, the FBI director, regardless of the amount of support that the White House is keen to put out for him, we do know that he said, you know, we've got the right guy. Very soon after the shooting on Wednesday night, he almost indicated that he was totally confident that this was sorted now, basically, on the evening. He had been given information, and there will be a lot of criticism about the information that he decided to release, because if people hear that someone's been taken into custody straight away, they may no longer continue to provide tips to law enforcement, and they may reduce the amount of collection that they are doing privately. I think people really underestimate the amount of information that domestic intelligence services like the FBI rely on from the general public. While they have extraordinarily capabilities for the collection of information and the processing of intelligence that we just won't see in, it is the dissemination, the last piece of the puzzle, which is so key in ensuring that the public stay engaged. That's why I think the FBI gave so much information 24 hours after this shooting, with the footage you're seeing right now, for example, of the suspect jumping from the roof of the Losi Centre, but also the CCTV in the stairwell, which they first released, those 2 images, then a further image of the back of the head, and then also in an increased level of urgency, asking for more information and providing a $100,000 reward if it does turn out to be the case that his father has turned him in via this suspect being spotted by a close friend who is a law enforcement official or a church minister. That'll be really interesting.
There is a little bit more information on, we don't know, we can't confirm any of this, obviously, but a bit more information coming in about the father of the alleged killer, who is evidently a 27-year veteran of the Washington County Sheriff's Department.
Right.
So part of the law and order himself, who took his son into custody. Charlie?
Well, we were talking, of course, about the FBI and about the director of the FBI and his conduct. He, of course, will be speaking in now just 6 minutes' time, Kash Patel, that is, live in Utah. In the meantime, let's speak to the former FBI special agent, James Hamilton. James, thanks for being with us. Can you explain just what the process of an FBI investigation really is? What will have been going on within the Bureau over the last 48 hours?
Hey, thanks for having me. All hands on deck, nationally significant case, numerous what we call buckets or areas of discipline. So people will be working social media, people will be working witness statements, people will be working the forensics. And right now people will be working, if everything you're saying is true and they have a suspect in custody, they'll be working an interview. And that'll be very telling. We might get a confession, we might not, but that's obviously a big piece of what's happening right now.
And James, how much of a problem would it have been that the President of the United States went live on TV and discussed the arrest of the shooter?
Well, I don't know about it being a problem. Certainly, if he's wrong, that might be a problem. But it sounds like, as you all are reporting, it sounds like they do have somebody, person of interest. Not surprised by what you're saying with regards to the family member family members turning him in. Would it be premature? I can't say that. He's the president, but you know, all things. I'm obviously happy that there's been an arrest, and we'll see what happens.
Now, it seems as though this arrest was some time ago, perhaps yesterday, and they've been working on sort of making sure that they've got the right person. Part of that will be interrogation. I mean, how does that interrogation actually work? Will they be sitting down opposite this guy in a room with a two-way mirror? I mean, I'm just trying to picture this in my head.
It's very similar to what you might have seen in movies, television. Two-way mirrors, maybe not, depending on the facility. But certainly there's going to be an agent there who's well-versed in investigation, who has, you know, a high degree of maturity and has done this before. And, you know, they'll try to develop a rapport and try to get a, you know, understanding as to if the individual wants to talk, because they don't have to in this country. But if they're willing to, you know, just what happened? Was it you? And if so, why'd you do it, type of deal? Give them the opportunity to speak.
James, there is still criticism of FBI Director Kash Patel on the way this was initially handled. Do you have any comments on that?
You mean with regards to multiple suspects being arrested?
Yes,
and then
yes.
It's happened. You know, historically, you've seen that. They want to quickly get somebody. Obviously, it helps the public with regards to fear and anxiety. But it's always prudent to kind of wait and make sure you've got the right person, because that speaks to credibility. You know, you don't want to say the wrong thing, and you want to make sure you're giving the public accurate information, and that's about the Bureau's, you know, reputation also. So we want to make sure that we're putting out proper information at the proper time. But again, he could have been told they've got a guy, and you know, he just went with what he was told from people underneath him.
That's the difficulty over the course of this process, because we had Kash Patel putting out on Twitter, I think it was, that they have the guy, and then we realised they didn't. We then had Trump saying live on the sofa of Fox and Friends that this is a 28 or 29-year-old suspect, and we now learn the suspect is 22. I mean, this has been a little bit messy around the edges.
Well, it's certainly, you know, information is hard to come by, and it's fast and it's going rapidly, as you well know. And 28 versus 22, could that have been a mistype in some text that went out to the president? Could be, I don't know. But I do know the communication is flying in these situations, and it's always prudent as the leader to kind of just take a deep breath and make sure we've got as much of the information as we possibly can that's accurate and put it out.
James, one thing we don't often have in the United Kingdom is rewards being offered for information, certainly not rewards to the level of $100,000. How helpful is that to your investigations?
Oh, it is. It's very helpful. I've been a part of those where, you know, you don't have any public support or they don't have a good eyewitness, and money starts talking. It definitely is a motivator. And for me, I was looking, if this didn't wrap up quickly, meaning if he wasn't caught quickly, I thought that reward would go higher, you know, in the coming days. So, yeah, it's very effective.
Mm-hmm. And James, we are discussing here the fact that we don't know for sure, it's yet to be confirmed in the press conference that is coming up, that it was the suspect's father, who is a member of law enforcement himself, that handed it in. Would you have any comment on that?
Not surprised by that. Seen that a bunch, and I've also worked cases where the father was, or the family member did turn them in to us. Have seen it, not surprised by it, glad to hear it. That's good, but not surprised that his father was a police officer.
Now, of course, this will be of huge attention, not just in the United States, but around the world. There'll be a score of journalists, I'm sure, in that room who will be picking apart all of the information that is released. I suspect, however, the FBI will want to withhold some information still at this stage. What can we expect to hear when Kash Patel starts speaking, which we must stress will be in the next couple of minutes' time?
Well, I would look for him to say something about the suspect, maybe a little bit about motivation if they know it. If there's any other accomplices, that's a big piece of the public safety, you know, puzzle. You don't want there to be a concern for the public that there's other individuals out there, co-conspirators, if you will. So I would look for him to talk to that. As far as motivation, I don't know, you know, if we'll get all of that or training, you know, rehearsal, things like that. But certainly you'd like to have some clarity with regards to.
Well, we are now looking at the podium there in Utah, where we are expecting Kash Patel to walk up there and deliver this statement any minute. Former FBI Special Agent James Hamilton still with us, of course. James, this is a room that we will all recognise. We've seen press conferences before here. But when we're looking at what actually will be being divulged, when it comes to the process of how this suspect was apprehended, there's got to be a delicate balance between how much is revealed and how much remains secret for reasons of security and future investigations.
Yeah, they're definitely balancing that, but public safety is super important, and you're going to see a lot of partnership. You'll hear that word probably a lot with regards to campus police, state police, federal police, ATF, FBI, all the various services who've helped here, and you'll see a lot of that. It's cooperation at its highest level. You know, this is a good thing, and this is what we want. Again, you don't want something like this to draw out and, you know, continue, and the guy's on the run, and you're the fugitive, and people are scared. That's what we, experienced during the D.C. sniper investigation, for instance. So this is great, and I think you'll see a lot of that. You'll see a lot of partnership. But again, as far as specificity, I think some of it will be, kept close to the vest. But, if the father turned him in through a priest, I think that's a great thing. And, also, if he's taken into custody without, some further violence, which you routinely see. You'll see suicide by cop, or they commit suicide, or they try to kill police officers. So I think that all in all, it's a positive outcome if, everything you're reporting is correct.
James, the one thing we don't know yet is obviously a motivation for this killing. Do you think that's something we might hear in the press conference more about?
I think so. Obviously, it's eerily similar to Butler, and so you'd like to kind of understand, for me, that's immediately where my mind.
Just to explain, Butler is Butler, Pennsylvania, where Donald Trump was a centimetre away from being shot in the head.
Correct. Outdoor event, rifle fire from an elevated position. They're very, very similar. So that to me is what I'd like to know more about. Certainly, the writing on the gun, at least what I've read in the paper, or listened to on the media, is there's writing on the gun, very consistent with what we've been seeing lately. And that's, again, part of motivation.
So, James, do you think this could be sort of almost inspired by the attempt on Donald Trump's life?
Well, I would not rule that out at all. Certainly, there's a connection between Donald Trump and the deceased, Mr. Kirk. That's been well reported. And, it would certainly, for me, I would be thinking that there's a connection with regards to an anger, or I wouldn't use the word hatred yet, but I would definitely say anger towards what Mr. Kirk was saying. And the similarities between Butler are, shocking.
So in your mind, basically, there is no doubt that this is a political assassination?
No, I wouldn't say no doubt. I would say I'd like to know more, but I'd say it looks troubling to me.
Now, I should say we're seeing some movement there by the podium. This was a press conference that was due to begin at 2 o'clock British time, 7 a.m. Utah time, but it has slipped. It slipped by half an hour, and we are waiting for Kash Patel, the FBI director, to appear there on that podium. While we wait, we are, of course, joined by the FBI Special Agent James Hamilton. Also in the studio with us is Charlie Peters, our national reporter. But James, this will be a big moment in the career of Kash Patel, and he hasn't been in the job long.
Right, and that's what happens. I remember my former director, Bob Mueller, he was not in his position but a week when 9/11 happened. So you got to be ready day one, and you will be tested, and he's being tested here. This is part of the position. It's high profile and high stress and high stakes.
James, we were talking earlier about the volatile nature of politics in America at the moment, with the attempt on Donald Trump's life and the assassination, murder of Charlie Kirk. What do you think has changed? Is there more of an anger, more of a rage in America at the moment?
I don't know about changed. I mean, if you study our history, especially, you look at the 1960s, we had a lot of high-profile assassinations from Bobby Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. And again, if we had had social media back then, I think, people would have been, as they are now, concerned about how angry folks are, or that we're seeing, people are supportive of a killing like this. I mean, you're reading reports like that, at least I am over here, and that's to me is troubling. You're seeing people say it's okay to kill someone for just speaking, what they believed in, that's okay somehow. And that to me has changed, and that to me is troubling. But there is certainly a copycat. Again, I speak to the writing on the rifle, the writing on the magazine. That is very consistent with what we've seen in the past, and that's only done through a copycat. They have to have seen that somewhere, and that's what's happening. And as far as I don't know. I can't obviously know the future, but I would say that I've never seen a time where it has been, this high with regards to the ability to use violence. I mean, Brian Thompson effect, the United Healthcare CEO that was killed, and a lot of people supported that. And Brian Thompson had no gun. He was just walking down the street. He was shot in the back and murdered. And if we're at a point in this country where it's okay just to murder somebody because you don't agree with them, then we certainly have a problem.
James, we were talking to an American politician earlier on who said if they were serving now, they would be frightened to speak in public. Do you think that's the general direction of travel?
Well, violence has been used to quiet speech for years. That's a historical reality. I certainly hope it doesn't. I would like to think that free speech on the right and the left and in the middle could continue in this country, and that people wouldn't be scared to speak out. But certainly they're going to be taking more precautions, I hope, and employing more security. Doesn't stifle speech. But go ahead.
Yes, no, I was just going to remind everyone that we are waiting for this press conference that has slipped a little bit in the timescale. No doubt there will be some last-minute adjustments to what information is released. And I wanted to ask you, James, do you think that what Donald Trump said on the sofa of Fox and Friends maybe an hour ago now, will have adjusted the terms of what Kash Patel will be saying in a few moments' time from that podium in Utah? Will they have to have adapted the initial plan, perhaps? Because certainly Donald Trump was pretty freewheeling with the information that he gave there on that sofa.
I don't know about adapted. I think that it's prudent that they are, putting the correct story out. It's not a story, what I mean by like a spin of the truth. What I mean is they need to all be putting out the right information, which is the correct and truthful information. So I'm sure right now they're trying to understand what he said. And it wouldn't be at all wrong for Mr. Patel, if, I don't know what the president said exactly, but if he had maybe said, I think he said he said 28 and the subject's actually 22 maybe. I think fine for Mr. Patel to say, hey, the information the president had was given to him. He put that out, but the actual information that we have currently, like the most up to date is 22. We certainly want to make sure that the truth is being put out and that there isn't any room for ambiguity or for people to think that the president was way off or there was some, anything like that. What we're looking for now is the ability to get some clarity and not, again, not to say poorly that the president spoke out of turn or whatever. He spoke. And I think Mr. Patel is going to make sure that, we're putting the truth out.
Yeah, so let's just run through what we know so far. With us in the studio, do stay with us on the line, James Hamilton, former FBI special agent. With us in the studio here in London is Charlie Peters, our national reporter. Charlie, what do we know so far about this suspect?
I just want to say very quickly, what former special agent James Hamilton has said there about getting the right information at the right time, it could not be more correct. That dissemination, often the art of intelligence, because that inspires more people to come forward with information. And we're hearing now that this press statement, which was due about 9 minutes ago, is being pushed back further. There was a spokesperson saying, reporters in the room moments ago, that they'd be given a 5-minute warning when it starts. Hasn't come yet, so I'll be keeping you updated on that. The problem I have, Tom, in light of what I've just said about what the former FBI agent James Hamilton has said about the right information at the right time, is we have increasingly conflicted information between the most powerful man in the world and what law enforcement agency sources are telling reporters. Donald Trump saying 28 or 29, himself saying that's the suspect's age, but himself saying that he was essentially open to being corrected. And then before this press statement has taken place, sources now saying a 22-year-old Tyler Robinson has been arrested last night, 11 p.m. local time in Utah. We're being told that the suspect's father, a 27-year veteran of the sheriff department of his local county being involved in detaining and handing over his son to the authorities 250 miles southwest of the shooting. It's been reported that that was at the home location of the suspect and his family.
Charlie, let's bring back James Hamilton on that very point, because James, in the world that we live in today, when everyone has access to social media, people are putting out their own facts, their own interpretations, can we still live in this world where the FBI puts out its facts at the right time, at the time it thinks is right, when the speculation is so rife online? Do they need to now be more forthcoming than perhaps they were in decades past?
Well, it's certainly forthcoming's good, and that's what you want to see. I do believe that I don't care how forthcoming you are, there are going to be individuals and segments of the population that are not going to believe anything you say. I just think we've got to that point in this country where right, left, it's so vitriol, at least in the U.S., that people just won't believe it. And I've seen it on both sides, in the last administration, and now I'm seeing it in this administration, and I continue to see it. And I worry about that. I do worry about that. And I think the gentleman in the studio is correct. I think the FBI has to put out what they know as truthful as they possibly can. If there mistakes have been made, I think it's always good to own it. It's not good to let mistakes go on or cover them up or talk over them. I think it's always good to own it, and it wasn't malicious. If something was said in the beginning, a lot of information's flying quickly. This age, that whole thing, just clear it up. Just clear it up for us. But I do think there's still segments of the population who aren't going to believe it, or there's going to be some conspiracies that, this isn't the individual, it isn't who they say he is, or he's a government agent, or, all that stuff's going to run wild. And that's always going to be there.
James Hamilton, it's Charlie Peters, reporter in the studio here. You yourself were a member of an FBI SWAT team at the early stage of your career with the Bureau. Can you explain to our audience about what some of the search operations and the investigations that the SWAT teams deployed from the Salt Lake City field office would have been conducting immediately after this shooting on Wednesday night? What sort of intelligence gathering, analytical techniques and operations would they have been deploying at the early stage of this investigation?
Yeah, you'd seen a couple of things. One is Salt Lake SWAT team would be up and going after, the quickest and hottest, what we call the hottest threat, or, a witness says, hey, I just saw the guy, and they would be responding. I wouldn't be surprised if the hostage rescue team in Quantico was notified and maybe started to spin up to come just in case this thing got protracted. The guy held up, or went into a home, barricaded himself, that type of thing. High profile events like this, the FBI is incredibly, they're excellent at marshaling a lot of resources very, very quickly. And I would expect to have seen things like that. They were, obviously getting a lot of leads very quickly, doing neighborhood canvases with the local police support. So I could fully see Salt Lake City police, Utah police doing a, some type of local canvass, getting a lead, calling the FBI, and that SWAT team kind of mobilizing very, very quickly. It would have been all hands on deck, and they would have been doing searches, clears, consent searches of residences if, people are worried that the guy's in their garage, that type of thing. Just high rhythm, if you will, a lot of stuff going on, long hours. Kudos to the FBI for catching this person, if that's in fact what's happened here, very, very quickly. That's an excellent testament to what the Bureau's doing.
It certainly is, and it's so difficult, the job that is being done, sometimes not because of the lack of information, but the abundance of information, the sort of needle in a haystack, sort of, I'm sure, given the status of this case, the publicity of it, the interest across the country, lots of people will have been trying to be helpful. And in some ways that might not actually be quite so helpful, filtering through that abundance environment of information.
Perfect. That's just a perfect point. That's exactly right. At the end of the day, you're going to start to run out of resources, and you got to start to prioritize these leads that are coming in, and you're getting a bunch of them. I mean, I remember after 9/11, you're getting thousands and thousands of leads, good-natured for the most part. People are trying to do the right thing, but, invariably they were wrong, or they had nothing to do with 9/11, but people are in their, kind of rush to help, again, you got to assign that lead to somebody, and there's only so many somebodies.
James, we are still waiting for the press conference to start. It was due at 2:30 UK time. It's now 15 minutes late. What do you think will be going on behind the scenes there now?
I think they're all trying to make sure they've got all the right information. I've been a part of these, and with communication devices the way they are today, and everyone's got one. Communication is flying, and I think they're just trying to get some clarity. They're trying to understand exactly what they can put out. They want to make sure they've got the right person, because we just don't know what's going on. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes, and I think they just want to make sure they're putting out the right information, and that's prudent. Again, I think we started this discussion about putting out information too quickly, and so now they're trying to be prudent and take some more time to get out information, and I think that's fine.
Well, James Hamilton, just one final question before we let you go. Could one of the issues holding back this press conference be that there's a material change in circumstance? Just speculating here, but what if the suspect hadn't been speaking and suddenly starts speaking? Everything could change.
Absolutely. You're exactly right. There's so many things could be going on right now. And nothing surprises me anymore. So we just, again, have to wait, and I think it's prudent. We certainly don't want to go to that podium and start to put something out, and then, in 2 hours it turns out to be improper or incorrect, and now the FBI and the nation, lose credibility, and we don't want that.
OK, well, Lee Cohen, James Hamilton, thanks indeed for joining us, former FBI special agent.
Let's indeed speak to Lee Cohen, shall we? It's US political commentator Lee Cohen. Lee, good to see you. Thank you for joining us. Lee, your reaction to this very fast-developing story this afternoon?
Well, like the gentleman before me just said, I think it's very prudent to delay. I think there was a lot of rejoicing when President Trump said this morning on Fox and Friends that the suspect was in custody because, everyone wants to see justice done and done swiftly. And the special agent is absolutely right. The tensions are so high here that this has to be done the right way.
Were you surprised when Donald Trump did give us that information live on TV this morning?
No, I wasn't surprised. And as I said, I think a lot of people were buoyant at that news because we've been on a knife's edge considering what happened. I read a very interesting article by Douglas Murray this morning in the New York Post, and he said something that was very interesting, but that I have a bit of a different take on. What Douglas said is, and he was talking about the eminence of political violence and how, it seems to be coming almost entirely from the left. But Douglas made the point, while the right tends to believe that the left is simply wrong, large portions of the left in this country believe that their opponents are not just wrong, but evil. And that's a quote. And what I'll say is, I think this is a turning point from that. I think Douglas was absolutely right. But I think because of the situation, because of who Charlie Kirk was, because he was so respectful of gathering opinions that differed from his own, and he listened, and his rapport with young people really on sort of both sides, that people feel a little bit differently now, and we conservatives do feel, certainly. How could you not feel that killing this man in his prime, 31 years old, with a beautiful family that he has, is not evil? Killing is by definition evil. But gunning down this guy who had so much promise and was so beloved, certainly on the right, but I believe respected on the left, you could not conclude anything but that if this is coming from the left, the left is now evil.
I think we are going to likely hear a lot more about a suspected motive in this press conference. There's been wild speculation online about messages that were written on either the cartridges, the bullets, or the rifle itself, political messages. Now, that hasn't been officially confirmed. No. There has been some contradictory reporting on that. No doubt we will hear confirmation one way or the other from Kash Patel, if not in his statement, then in the question and answer sessions afterwards. And of course, there have been a lot of political shootings or attempted shootings of figures that are associated with right-wing politics or capitalism in America, not least the United Healthcare CEO and Donald Trump on 2 occasions. But there have also been shootings of left-wing politicians. Just earlier this year, I believe it was earlier this year, the Minnesota state legislators, 2 of them Democrats, shot. Sorry, that was to you, Lee.
I'm sorry, you cut out. I didn't hear the very last bit.
Oh, sorry, I was just mentioning the 2 Democratic Minnesota state legislators who were shot earlier this year.
Yes, and, you know, certainly this isn't a tit for tat, and political violence, no matter where it comes from, cannot be tolerated in a civil society. However, if we did tot this up, I think we can say that there's a lot more coming from the left, and, you know, the unhinged reaction on social media. I think that conservatives still pride themselves on being decent and humane, and I don't think you would see that same kind of reaction that you saw. And so while it does occur, as you say, I think it's far more rare coming from the left, but wrong and intolerable. We cannot tolerate this. We need to introduce more civility into our society.
This is where we are now, Lee, on both sides, isn't it? In America and the UK, the freedom of speech issue is huge on both sides of the Atlantic, and we are seeing people now murdered for daring to have an opinion. You might not agree with that opinion, but to want to murder someone for that is quite astonishing. How worried about you where this is going?
Well, you know, I think it's interesting for us to be having this conversation because the UK is considered to be the cradle of free speech and liberties, and certainly America's liberties emanate from the UK, with England as our mother country, and so this is the right place to be having this discussion. It's very concerning. You know, certainly while we don't want to police things on social media, we want to maintain free speech. I think it's concerning that a lot of people hide behind, you know, false identities. It's not themselves, so they feel empowered to say whatever they want. Now, is that really free speech if you can't attribute it to who the speaker is? I don't know, but it's interesting that this all has come to a head with the, you know, absolutely woeful slaying of this wonderful, talented man when we were just having this discussion when Nigel Farage was over here briefing the House Judiciary Committee about his concerns about free speech in your country. And, you know, J.D. Vance, Donald Trump, Elon Musk have all weighed in on this. This is unprecedented. I've never seen so much interest in free speech from the United States vis-a-vis the UK.
It's such an interesting angle because it's not just sort of, you know, the state preclusions on what people can say, people being arrested for what they tweet or being sort of having a knock on the door for having an opinion that doesn't sit within the sort of mainstream idea, for having a view that could be considered grossly offensive is the language in the Communications Act that makes grossly offensive communication illegal. illegal in the United Kingdom. But it's interesting to think of the political assassinations that we've seen in the United Kingdom as a speech issue as well. Sir David Amess exercised his speech as a Conservative MP, and an Islamist terrorist stabbed him to death for it. Jo Cox exercised her freedom of speech as a Labour MP, and she was shot and stabbed to death for it. I mean, we did see those two political assassinations within the last decade in this country.
No, that's certainly true. And, you know, we tend to think that the UK is a far less violent society, but incidents like that would be at odds with that. So, unfortunately, this is a borderless problem.
Yeah, and one of those things that we were talking about earlier was the sort of the distance that the suspect could have travelled within the sort of internal borderless structure of the United States, a continent-scale country, how far this individual could have gone. And yet now we're learning he might have been arrested just 150 miles from where the shooting took place.
Well, you know, we've heard a lot of things, and that's why I'm really interested to hear what this FBI briefing will reveal. But we've heard a lot of things that he was turned in by someone very close to him, someone that may have been a minister or a clergyman. You know, these are all interesting things. But, you know, we thought right afterwards they had a suspect in custody, that chap, elderly man who was on the ground. And, you know, everyone sort of released in a torrent of hatred against him. So I think they really do have to be careful until we absolutely know what's going on here.
There is a lot to learn, of course. Shall we just stay with us on the line, Lee Cohen? Shall we recap what we do know for certain? Live in our studio is, of course, Charlie Peters, our reporter across this. Do remind us, what do we know for certain about this?
Well, Tom and Don, we're just being told now that speakers at this FBI-led press conference will be Director Kash Patel, the FBI special agent in charge, which is Robert Bowles, the Utah Governor Spencer Cox, who has been a mainstay of these press statements since Wednesday evening, and also the Utah Department of Public Safety Commissioner Bo Mason. So at least 4 speakers, we believe, coming up at this press conference. Now, what we do know at the stage, according to reports in the United States, is that a 22-year-old is in custody, being named in the US as Tyler Robinson. Now, we're also being told that this arrest, the detention of this suspect, took place at 11 p.m. last night in Utah time, and that the father of the suspect was involved in detaining Tyler Robinson, that's 22-year-old. His father, a sheriff, a 27-year veteran of US law enforcement. We're also being told that his mother works for a company contracted by the state of Utah to support disabled people. So coming from a family 250 miles southwest of the location where the shooting took place. Now, that is not information that's been released publicly by the authorities at this stage. The President of the United States told us about an hour and a half ago now that they had somebody in custody, saying, "We believe we've got them." He explained that a minister had been involved in speaking to the father of the suspect and convincing him about this situation, identifying this alleged suspect, 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, likely through the information that the FBI had released, because they released a clip we're showing, of course, of this suspect jumping off a roof, but also really detailed CCTV imagery of this suspect inside a stairwell at the Losi Center, the building from which the firing position was taken, about 130 metres away from the open-air amphitheatre where Charlie Kirk was seated at the time of his killing.
Well, he was trying to hide his face in that photograph, wearing a low baseball cap. Clearly trying to hide who he was, and yet apparently what we're hearing is that there was a positive identification of him made, or of this suspect made, off the basis of just a slither of his face.
Some of the information that the FBI released in that photo may not have been caught upon by ordinary people who don't recognise him. However, there's one detail that I've picked up based on other images that have been shared online of this suspect reportedly. He's wearing the same shoes in that stairwell imagery.
Grey Converses.
Grey Converse shoes, laced up. The same white-laced grey Converses that have been seen in other photos of him, potentially in a dormitory-style bedroom. We don't know, of course, further details about Tyler Robinson, his education, his background, what he's been up to. But there is every chance that the person who recognised Tyler Robinson, as we're being told, and then passed that information on to his father, who then detained him, could have gleaned that information from that photo released in the stairwell. I think that will have been the key evidential basis for that passing over, that photo of him in the stairwell. It's also possibly, Tom, the third photo they released, very interesting, of the back of his head as he turns the corner in the stairwell of this suspect, showing the cropped back of his hair. Now, obviously, with sunglasses and a cap, the front shot of his face, not particularly clear who he is. It's quite difficult to recognise someone based on the jaw and chin and lips alone, and parts of the nose, of course, as well. But the back of a head, all of that information combined, plus his build, wearing quite... his build would have been quite identifiable by virtue of the fact he wasn't wearing particularly loose clothing. There's a T-shirt that hugged the form, jeans and those Converse shoes we're referring to.
Interestingly, those shoes, that hat, they have been seen in other photographs of this individual. We were talking about this assassination as if it was an incredibly sophisticated operation with someone who had meticulously planned it, planned his escape route, evaded authorities. And yet, Dawn, I mean, the guy was wearing his own clothes that he can be seen wearing in lots of other photographs. I mean, perhaps this wasn't the sort of genius assassination that we were speaking about yesterday.
It does make you wonder. I mean, he obviously is only 22 years old, according to the main source we have now. And it does make you wonder, wearing such distinctive clothing, that he wanted to get caught, maybe. I mean, we are just speculating. If you are just joining us now, we are waiting to go live to the press conference where the FBI are going to update us on what is actually happening. We are discussing the story, obviously, because Donald Trump broke the story live on TV on Fox News in America earlier this morning, which many of you are asking, why are we making a point of asking American commentators, you know, are they surprised by what their president did? And yes, we are, because I don't ever remember a story like that being broken live on TV by an American president of a live case. So that is the reason we're asking that question, just to put your minds at rest there. We're not having Donald Trump for that one, but it is unheard of, I think, on live TV.
It does speak to somehow the sort of almost casual but incredibly transparent nature of this administration, perhaps transparent to a fault. But let's put some of that transparency questioning to Lee Cohen, a US political commentator, still with us down the line. Lee, I mean, Donald Trump does talk a lot and perhaps sometimes give away more than people around him would like him to.
Well, Tom, one thing that struck me this morning when I read accounts, and you know, I'm a staunch Trump supporter, but it surprised me that the president said, not because it's out of character for him to say, but because it's jarring to hear a president say it, that he hopes that, not that he hopes justice will be done, but that he hopes that the perpetrator will get the death penalty. And when I read that, I thought, wow, you know, of course he does, and no one perhaps is surprised